p.m. tomorrow night. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, he reached 19% support in the national poll released today. He is fourth with more than 10% support, meeting the DNC's debate threshold. Bernie Sanders is first with 31%. Michael Bloomberg is second. Joe Biden is third with 15%. Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos announced the creation of the Bezos Earth Fund. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter reports.
Bezos says he's starting with $10 billion and will begin to issue grants in a few months. On an Instagram post, he says it's going to take collective action from big companies, small companies, nation states, global organizations, and individuals. We can save Earth. Now, he's been under pressure from employees for practices they say will injure the Earth long term, things like packaging. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
And I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan?
Thanks, Michael. 6:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Good morning, Rob Bushka.
Good morning, Nathan. The Islanders had the New York sports landscape to themselves on Monday, but they fell in a President's Day matinee 2-1 in Arizona. Islanders coach Barry Trotz.
We talk about a game of inches. It's really a game of centimeters right now. Our team kept battling, and that's something that's a real positive. I mean, I thought, as much as they deserved to win that game, so did we.
Anthony Beauvillier had the lone goal in the third period for the Isles, who were tied for third in the Metro Division with the Blue Jackets. Both New York teams are off on Tuesday. The Devils face the champs, the Blues, on the road at 8 o'clock. NASCAR held its Super Bowl, the Daytona 500, Monday after rain postponed the race 24 hours. All eyes were on one of the most horrific crashes witnessed in years by Ryan Newman. Executive Vice President Steve O'Donnell.
Ryan Newman is being treated at Halifax Medical Center. He's in serious condition, but doctors have indicated his injuries are non-life-threatening. We appreciate your thoughts and prayers and ask that you respect the privacy of Ryan and his family during this time. We appreciate your patience and cooperation and will provide more information as it becomes available.
Denny Hamlin took the checkered flag, his third win at Daytona. Baseball, Yankees and Mets have reported to Florida. Yankees skipper Aaron Boone asked if they'll be beating the Astros for sign stealing.
We won't be in the business of, going after or throwing at people on purpose. And, we'll just have to see how everything unfolds. But I don't expect it to be an issue for us.
The Yankees' biggest offseason acquisition, pitcher Garrett Cole, was part of that now infamous 2017 World Series championship team in Houston. College hoops, Xavier went on an 8-0 run to beat St. John's 77-74 at the Garden. And that's your NBC Bloomberg Sports Update. Nathan?
Okay, Rob, thank you. S&P futures are down almost 14 points now. Dow futures lower by 149 points. NASDAQ futures down almost 69 points. 10 years up 12.30 seconds. Yield 1.54%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city in the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
I'm Jenny Taft here with
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Teaching shapes lives. If you're considering a career in teaching, you could be eligible for a £26,000 tax-free training bursary. Find out about the financial support to help you start your career in the classroom. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Bursary subject to eligibility. Selected subjects only.
Unmistakable. New York City. From the second you first hear it, like the soundtrack to your favorite film played live. After 7 dream-filled days at sea to do as much or as little as you please, and then you're awake, Brooklyn bound, sailing silently beneath bridges as the skyline rises from the Hudson to meet you. Bask on your balcony and take your coffee with cream as Lady Liberty welcomes you to the city that never sleeps. That's a world away. That's the transatlantic crossing by Cunard. Discover more at cunard.com. APTA and atoll protected.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday, the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Heidi Stroud-Watts.
Well, Asian stocks all set for a mixed start to Friday trading. Investors continuing to mull the latest coronavirus developments and news that the Federal Reserve will dial back its liquidity injections. Our next guest is JP Morgan Asset Management Global Market Strategist Kerry Craig, who joins us now from Melbourne. Kerry, the news from the Fed that sent US stocks toppling for the first time this week, that they're dialing back on the extent of these repo operations, is it poorly timed, given that I feel like the rally so far throughout this coronavirus threat has been on the basis of ample liquidity globally, and that central banks will step in addition to fiscal support from governments?
Good morning. Well, that's certainly the case that markets have sort of reacted to this idea that you get a central bank put, or any time there is something to disrupt markets, the central banks actually reinforce that accommodative stance or even cut interest rates or increase their balance sheets. The repo market operations are slightly different to thinking about QE, wholesale QE at least, in terms of what the central bank actions are. And in the case of the Fed, it's them pumping liquidity into the market to ensure that the plumbing in the system works in the US. And that's what we saw in the fourth quarter of last year, where you had that tightness full in, some of those short interest rates started to rise, and obviously we had those repo operations.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app. Or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Walmart shares lower, but they have trimmed their declines. They're down 0.5% right now. This is after its forecast for 2021 missed analyst estimates. S&P futures down 14 points. Dow futures down 152. NASDAQ futures down 72. 10-year Treasury up 12.30 seconds. Yield 1.54%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.5% or 77 cents at 51.28 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.25% or $4.20 at 15.90.70 an ounce. The euro 1.0835 against the dollar, the yen 109.71. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you, Karen. Michael Bloomberg has qualified to join the other Democratic presidential candidates on the debate stage for the first time tomorrow night. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, he reached 19% support in the national poll released today. He is fourth with more than 10% support, meeting the DNC's debate threshold. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. In sports, Denny Hamlin won the Daytona 500. Meanwhile, Ryan Newman is in serious condition after a horrific crash. In the NHL, the Islanders lost along with the Capitals. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. We're coming up to 6:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Let's get you set up for the trading day and holiday shortened week ahead. Joining us from New York, Joe Weisenthal, head of the Americas News Desk at Bloomberg News. In London, we're joined by executive editor Heather Harris, and we're pleased to have editor Madeline Lim with us from Hong Kong this morning. Let's start with you, Joe Weisenthal, because for weeks, the overriding story for markets has been the potential effects of the coronavirus, and now Apple is dominating that story this morning, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been extraordinary the last few weeks, the degree to which this market has been able to shake off the obvious risks posed to the global economy by the coronavirus, but Apple really sort of putting a point on it and reminding everyone how serious this is, getting hit in China on the supply and the demand side. Not surprising either in either side, because we know that factories have been slow to reopen. We know how exposed their supply chain is to Chinese manufacturing. And, of course, on the demand side, China's still a very significant source of demand for new iPhones and so forth. And we know that so many of those stores have either been closed or that people aren't going out to shop as much. And I just think, in a sense, it's not surprising because everyone could have anticipated this, seeing the news. But on the other hand, really focusing the concentration of minds today back on this story.
As for the coronavirus itself, Madeline Lim, aren't there signs now that at least the spread of the pathogen may be stabilizing somewhat?
Yes, stabilizing indeed, Nathan, and potentially the numbers of new infections and deaths slowly declining. But nobody really can even or feels competent of calling a turn in the trend or a peak or anything like that. And it still bears watching. I think what dominated headlines today here in Asia was the fact that a senior hospital official in Wuhan itself died today of the disease, and this is the seventh health worker in China to die, and about 1,700 health workers are among the infected in China. So this has triggered some backlash and some, against the authorities and some criticism. So that part is not over yet. And as Joe said, the economy has been running well below its potential, like at least 40 to 50% below capacity, according to our own economists here at Bloomberg Economics. And so what we'll be watching in the days coming will be how traffic, how flight path plans and things like that recover in order to see whether people are actually coming back to work in factories, and also whether this crackdown that we've seen that has closed down a lot of the cities where people are no longer allowed to leave their residential compounds, whether that will be eased up or not.
One of the other big corporate stories we're watching this morning is HSBC's earnings, Heather Harris. Some major cost cutting on the way for the big bank.
That's right. So this is Noel Quinn, the interim CEO. It's his plan to restart the bank, and it's the most dramatic overhaul this bank has announced in many years. However, big numbers, 35,000 job cuts, $4.5 billion of cost reductions at underperforming units, $7.3 billion of charges. It's not enough. A lot of analysts are saying this is too conservative, and the shares as we speak are down nearly 6%. The other big unknown is who's going to execute this strategy, since HSBC, after 7 months now, has still not named a new CEO.
Joe Weisenthal, back to you with earnings that just crossed the Bloomberg terminal moments ago from Walmart. And this is a double whammy of a miss for investors.
Yes, Walmart, the major retailer, coming out and saying that its Q4 sales did fall a little bit short. Same store sales, which is, of course, a key metric, only gaining by 1.9%. Expectations were 2.4%. There's just, it's one of these things. There's a lot of general reasons why people can cite weakness, say warmer weather or something, or lack of really must-have items. But something that we've seen across the retail landscape, just the holiday season didn't seem to be that hot. Also, e-commerce sales expected to grow 30% this year. That's down from 35% last year. That's a key category. So all in all, just not a great report from Walmart, but the size of the sell-off pre-market is fairly modest, less than 0.5% right now. So to some extent, it appears investors were anticipating this.
All right, let's go back to Heather Harris in London. Some possible deal news with Italian banks, Heather?
Yeah, here's something we did not expect at all amid all the scares about the coronavirus. An audacious, unsolicited takeover bid by Intesa Sanpaolo to take over local rival UBI, Unione di Banche Italiane. And while this takeover offer was being launched just before midnight in Italy, the CEO of the target was busy or had just unveiled his 3-year strategic plan in London. So he was completely blindsided by this. So it's the talk of the town. Will this get done? Will this spark further consolidation in the Italian banking sector and indeed in Europe?
Heather Harris, Bloomberg News executive editor, with us from our London studios this morning. Also, thanks to Bloomberg editor Madeline Lim, joining us from Hong Kong, and Joe Weisenthal, head of the Americas News Desk for Bloomberg News, with us this morning from Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York City. S&P futures are lower by 13.5 points at the moment. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. For the second time in as many years, Apple is tempering its sales outlook because of surprises in China. First it was the trade war, and now it's the coronavirus outbreak. That's also hitting stocks this morning. The Dow futures down about 130 points. The World Health Organization says cruise ship travel remains a manageable risk for now, and it does not make sense, it says, to recommend a ban on it, even as the return home of 3,000 travelers from 2 coronavirus-stricken cruise ships fuels fears of further contagion. Big job cuts are coming to HSBC. The bank says it will eliminate as many as 35,000 jobs over 3 years as part of a cost-cutting move aimed at slashing $4.5 billion in spending. Dow Jones reports that Dell is nearing a deal to sell its RSA security business to a private equity firm. The reported price tag is $2 billion. Dell acquired RSA through its 2016 takeover of EMC. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Teaching shapes lives. If you're considering a career in teaching, you could be eligible for a £26,000 tax-free training bursary. Find out about the financial support to help you start your career in the classroom. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Bursary subject to eligibility. Selected subjects only.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing, gotta check me a vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back. While Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Global stocks are falling as Apple says quarterly sales will miss forecast. That's unnerving investors who had hoped for a limited impact from the deadly coronavirus. Mehdi Hosseini covers Apple for Susquehanna Financial.
It's more than just Apple, and I think Apple is pretty much a tip of the iceberg. I think other companies will come out and use the Apple as an excuse to reset the bar.
Tech stocks in Europe and Asia slid on the forecast. A flight to safety has the yield on 30-year treasuries below 2%, its lowest level since September, and shares of Apple are down more than 3% in the pre-market.
Meantime, there are new developments on the virus and the stricken Diamond Princess cruise liner. For that, we turn to Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong.
China reported 1,886 new coronavirus cases and 98 more deaths. Britain, the latest to evacuate nationals from the cruise liner, following Japan, the U.S., Australia, and South Korea. In the meantime, the Hong Kong government is seeking $3.6 billion in spending on virus control. And in neighboring Macau, casinos now look set to reopen on Thursday after being shut for 15 days. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Brian, thank you. Walmart is out with earnings and comparable sales that missed estimates. The company also issued guidance that fell short of expectations. Shares of Walmart are down 0.25% in early trading.
In Europe, HSBC plans to cut about 35,000 staff from its workforce. It'll also take more than $7 billion of charges in a sweeping overhaul. We spoke exclusively with Chief Financial Officer Ewan Stevenson.
We're going to be quite surgical and ruthless in terms of targeting those parts of the business where we're not generating acceptable returns.
Most of those cuts will target staff in the U.S. and Europe. Shares of HSBC are down more than 6% in London.
In deal news, Bloomberg News has learned Franklin Resources is nearing an all-cash offer for asset manager like Mason. The deal would create an investing giant with more than $1 trillion in assets under management.
And Dell Technologies is reportedly near a deal to sell its RSA security to a private equity firm. That's according to the Wall Street Journal, which says STG Partners is seeking to buy the unit for more than $2 billion.
S&P futures are lower, down about 13 points. Dow futures down 147. NASDAQ futures down 68. The DAX in Germany is down 0.7%. 10-year Treasury up 11/32, yield 1.54%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.39%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.5%, or 79 cents at 51.26 a barrel, and the British pound is at 1.3034 against the dollar. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and this news update is brought to you by Command Financial. Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer staying ahead of the curve? Learn how Command Financial is evolving not only with the times, but with your business requirements. Visit commandfinancial.com today. Now here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Nathan. The Boy Scouts of America announced today that it has filed for bankruptcy protection. The filing comes as the 110-year-old organization faces lawsuits claiming it failed to remove known sexual predators from the organization. The filing puts those lawsuits on hold while the court supervises the payment of some claims. The Federal Judges Association is calling an emergency meeting to address Attorney General William Barr. It comes as more than 2,000 former Justice Department officials are calling for the resignation of Barr. Last week, 4 career prosecutors withdrew from the case after Barr overruled their sentencing recommendation for Roger Stone. Former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Ariana Berg.
Though it may not result in the resignation of Bill Barr, my hope is that this becomes a battle cry across all parties for the oath of preserving the integrity and the impartiality of the Department of Justice that I love so much.
Michael Bloomberg has qualified to join the other Democratic presidential candidates on the debate stage for the first time tomorrow night. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, he reached 19% support in the national survey, is fourth with more than 10% support, meeting the DNC's debate threshold. Bernie Sanders is first with 31%. Michael Bloomberg is second. Joe Biden is third with 15%. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos says he's created the Bezos Earth Fund to help counter the effects of climate change. More from Bloomberg's Mark Mills.
Bezos is starting with $10 billion and will begin to issue grants in a few months. In an Instagram post on Monday, Bezos said to save the Earth, it's going to take collective action from big companies, small companies, nation states, global organizations, and individuals. Amazon has been criticized, both internally and from outside the company, for heavy fossil fuel use in its ubiquitous delivery of goods. Bezos is under pressure to offset the environmental consequences of the rapid growth of online shopping. The world's richest person, Bezos, has a net worth of more than $130 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. Mark Mills, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. It's 6:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Good morning, Rob Bushka.
Good morning, Nathan. NASCAR is the only major sport to begin its season with its championship event, the Daytona 500. Scary moments in the final lap when Ryan Newman, who was leading, crashed in a ball of fire, skidded across the finish line on the roof of his car, taken to the hospital, and remains in serious condition, according to Senior Vice President Steve O'Donnell.
Ryan Newman is being treated at Halifax Medical Center. He's in serious condition, but doctors have indicated his injuries are non-life-threatening. We appreciate your thoughts and prayers and ask that you respect the privacy of Ryan and his family during this time. We appreciate your patience and cooperation and will provide more information as it becomes available.
Denny Hamlin won the race for the third time in his career, including back-to-back. Hockey, tough loss for the Islanders on the road Monday, 2-1 in the desert against the Coyotes. Isles coach Barry Trotz.
We talk about a game of inches. It's really a game of centimeters right now. So we just battled through that. Our team kept battling, and that's something that's a real positive. I mean, I thought as much as they deserve to win that game, so did we.
Anthony Beauvillier, the lone goal in a losing cause. The loss keeps New York tied for third in the Metro with Columbus, who plays tonight. As does New Jersey. They visit St. Louis at 8 o'clock. Both New York teams skate on Wednesday. Mets and Yankees are in Florida for spring training. Mets skipper Luis Rojas on the optimism for Yoenis Cespedes.
He hasn't missed a beat facing pitchers. He's ticking the ball. He hit a shot that just went foul, a little bit up front, but he's got so much power. The ball left the yard there on field 7 on a slider. So we'll see his progression, how he keeps going.
Games begin on Saturday. College basketball, Xavier beat St. John's 77-74. That's your NBC Bloomberg Sports Update. Nathan?
Thanks, Rob. We're coming up to 6:38 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Trump's tariffs haven't rescued American steel. I'm Justin Fox, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. It's been almost 2 years since President Trump announced new tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. We must not let our country, companies, and workers be taken advantage of any longer, he tweeted at the time. Things have gone just fine for the country since then, but not for companies and workers in the U.S. steel and aluminum industries. The company's share prices have collapsed, while metals industry employment is now lower than it was when the tariffs were announced. The tariffs aren't to blame for the industry's troubles. The global industrial slump is. But the president's habit of pulling out all the stops to help struggling sectors, coal is another, seems self-defeating. An industrial policy of picking winners is hard enough to get right, but you're stacking the deck against yourself if you focus on the losers. I'm Justin Fox. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. 6:39 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report. Here's John Tucker.
Shortly after the San Francisco 49ers punched their ticket to the Super Bowl, tight end George Kittle appeared in the locker room wearing a unique outfit. It was a large white T-shirt with a shirtless photo of the 49ers quarterback. It instantly went viral online and on social media. It was sent to him by John Wolf, an MBA student at Columbia Business School, whose tiny T-shirt company called Shirt Faced dates back to a class project. The buzz around the shirt was a dream for Wolf. Wolf and a friend launched Shirt Face back in 2018 through a Columbia class that Wolf took called Launch Your Startup. Their small company lets users upload photos and design their own shirt. Wolf says that while interning for an NFL team last year, he came up with a new marketing idea of sending shirts to players and coaches, hoping that they'd wear the shirts in interviews and other appearances. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
All right, John, thanks. Wall Street gets an early look at February manufacturing today when the New York Fed issues its regional factory index. Here with more is Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Economists are forecasting today's regional report, one of many from the Fed system, will point to growth, providing evidence that manufacturing could be poised to stabilize after a challenging year. In January, the New York Fed's factory index rose to 4.8, the highest since May. Over the next 10 days, we'll also get regional factory data from the Fed's district banks in Philadelphia, Dallas, Richmond, in Kansas City. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thanks. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires. Which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Thank you so much. I would like to say a few words. I'll keep it short. For Sergey and I, this is a great honor. The cinema has always been a big part of our lives. Thank you to everyone that celebrates the cinema, especially this awards season. But a special thank you to Compare the Market for bringing life to every Tuesday or Wednesday with a whole year of 2-for-1 cinema tickets from Meerkat Movies.
Qualifying purchase, participating cinemas, cheapest free, T's and C's apply.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Connecting decision makers to a network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Billionaire and former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg is qualified for tomorrow night's Democratic presidential debate in Las Vegas, paving the way for his first appearance on stage with his 2020 rivals. Bloomberg met the Democratic National Committee mandated polling threshold this morning, hitting 19% nationally in a new NPR PBS NewsHour Marist survey above the 10% threshold. Japanese health authorities are seeing a sharp rise in cases of virus found on that quarantine cruise ship, the Diamond Princess, near Tokyo. Matt Rivers has the new information for us, reporting from Tokyo.
What we just found out, Japan's Ministry of Health announced that there were 88 more positive diagnoses on board the ship, which brings the total number to 544. 544 cases on board the ship in terms of who remains on the ship. You know, all those Americans got evacuated. There are a few Americans that chose not to get on that flight. They remain on board.
Stock futures are following world markets in decline this morning. I'm Michael Toscano.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the head count?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:47 on Wall Street. Futures are falling this morning. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bailey Lipschultz. Bailey, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. As you said, stocks are trading lower after Apple said quarterly sales would miss forecasts due to the coronavirus. The Dow is down 167 points. S&P lower by 14, with the Nasdaq off 71 points. U.S. 10-year yield is at 1.54%. Shanghai fluctuated overnight, and European markets are moving lower, led by losses in the UK and Germany. Back in the U.S. on the economic front, at 8:30, Empire Manufacturing, and at 10 o'clock, NAHB Housing Market Index. Apple shares are down 3.4% after saying the fallout from the coronavirus would cause it to miss sales targets, and Walmart's holiday sales and outlook for the year missed analysts' expectations. Regarding deals, Dow Jones reported that Dell is near a deal to sell its security unit to private equity for $2 billion. And in other news, HSBC plans to cut more than 35,000 jobs. Shares fell more than 6% in London. Wrapping things up, Morgan Stanley raised its Tesla bull case to $1,200 a share. Alliance Data was cut to market perform over at JMP, and Amarin was raised to buy from neutral at Citi. Live from the First Word Breaking News Desk, I'm Bailey Lipschultz. Karen?
Bailey, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, Michael Bloomberg is qualified to join the other Democratic presidential candidates on the debate stage for the first time tomorrow night. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, he reached 19% support in the national survey released today. He is fourth with more than 10% support, meeting the DNC's debate threshold. Bernie Sanders is first with 31%. Michael Bloomberg is second. Joe Biden is third with 15%. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. The Boy Scouts of America has filed for bankruptcy protection as it faces a barrage of new sex abuse lawsuits. In sports, Denny Hamlin won the Daytona 500. Meanwhile, Ryan Newman is in serious condition after a scary crash at the finish. In the NHL, the Islanders lost along with the Capitals. Finally, from daybreak on the Bloomberg, gift cards may be easy presents, but they're often left unused. According to Bankrate.com, more than $20 billion in unredeemed cards and store credit is floating around the U.S. Half of all adults have about $167 in some form of unused credit. And Nathan, about 1/4 of adults have allowed a gift card to expire.
Well, I don't know about adults, but I can certainly vouch for that when it comes to my kids, Michael. They have so many unused gift cards in their dresser drawers, they can barely fit their gym socks in them anymore.
See? And you have a gift card for gym socks. That's messed up.
Right. I'll use them. That's what I'm saying. Keep them coming. I will use them.
Global news 24 hours a day on air. I'll be by your house. And on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr with Jim Sox. This here is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Bet it is. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, where it's 6:50 on Wall Street. And it is now time to check what's going on in D.C., where some of the top stories include President Trump beginning a West Coast campaign swing today in Los Angeles. He'll be out west for the next few days. The Trump administration is considering a new wave of tech export restrictions on China, and India is signaling new trade concessions ahead of the president's visit to that country next week. Also making news this morning, a new poll that will mean a new face on the Democratic debate stage tomorrow night. Joining us here with more from our Bloomberg 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C., Bloomberg U.S. politics editor Kathleen Hunter. And we heard from Michael Barr just moments ago, Kate, about this poll that will put Michael Bloomberg, the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg Radio parent company, Bloomberg LP, on tomorrow night's Las Vegas debate stage. How much does this shake things up?
Well, I think it definitely is a key development at a key moment for the Bloomberg campaign and for the Democratic race for the nomination. Obviously, Bloomberg's been rising in polls. He's been getting a lot of attention. He's been drawing, by some accounts, support, particularly from Biden. And so I think that this, there's been a lot of questions out there about whether these debates actually change anything. But I think that this could be potentially a game changer for this debate, and it may have an impact on the Nevada caucuses.
And I mean, this will be the first time we've seen Michael Bloomberg as a presidential candidate on the debate stage. I would have to think that his competitors in the Democratic primary race are going to be focusing a lot of their fire on him tomorrow night.
You would think so, and I think it's also an important moment because, his campaign thus far has been very, very focused on advertising. A lot of people have seen these commercials that have been running in various states, but this is going to be a chance to see Michael Bloomberg from a different perspective, for voters to see him, lined up with his rivals for the nomination. And so I think that is going to be a different perspective for voters, and I think it'll be very interesting to see how he does.
And we should also say that Bernie Sanders particularly has been ramping up a lot of his critiques against Michael Bloomberg in just the last few days. How could that potentially play out on the debate stage?
Well, that'll be a particularly interesting dynamic to watch, the Sanders-Bloomberg dynamic. And I think that, part and parcel of that is the Biden-Bloomberg dynamic, because I think part of why we're seeing Bernie Sanders take the approach that he is there's been a lot of, musing out there about whether or not Bloomberg is rivaling Biden at this point for kind of the centrist alternative, is becoming the centrist alternative to Biden, as his campaign is really struggling at this point. And so I think that watching the interaction between the three of those candidates is going to be fascinating.
How is Biden retooling his campaign after the losses, the disappointing results for him in Iowa and New Hampshire?
Well, I think that he's trying to do a lot more kind of public events ahead of Nevada, and trying to, we're hearing a bit of a different tone from him. For a long time, he was sort of the self-proclaimed, and a lot of the polling supported this front runner prior to Iowa and New Hampshire. He was widely viewed as the candidate to beat. And so I think the tone is a bit different now. It's a bit more humble. There's a bit more of a sense that he, knows that he needs to perform well, but trying to deliver crisp speeches and look forward, not backwards.
And how much attention is going to be potentially on Pete Buttigieg, who was the winner of the Iowa caucuses and hasn't seemed to get much more attention than that beyond the Iowa result?
Yeah, and so he's been an interesting candidate to watch because, the bit of the moment that Bloomberg seems to be having this week, was sort of Buttigieg's moment a week ago or 2 weeks ago now. And so I think that, it'll be interesting to see once we have another round of results, how the field is reshuffled, because it seems as though every news cycle, every, 24, 48-hour news cycle is shifting things around right now. And so I think we need, another round of voting, and then, looking ahead to South Carolina and Super Tuesday, that's kind of the next sort of set of, moments for this race, and things can shift very, very quickly.
Also part of the current news cycle, arguably, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who just made his first public appearance since the impeachment trial, and isn't exactly mincing words when it comes to what could be coming out of his forthcoming book.
No, he isn't at all. And I think that, I think we know that John Bolton at this point is a genius at selling books, because everyone's going to be so interested to see this book when it does come out. But I think the key takeaway right now is that, he's said that the government's reviewing the manuscript of his book, and that he has concerns that essentially it's going to be censored because of some of the things that he's said about his interactions with Trump, which he says the White House is essentially claiming, might be national security breaches.
Is there a concern at the White House with John Bolton inserting himself still after impeachment that could affect his reelection prospects?
I think that's a possibility, but I do think really overall this whole impeachment issue has pretty much been put to bed in the sense of how it's going to influence the election, just because, there could be these additional bombshells, but there kind of have been right along. And I just think that for most voters, it's either a non-issue or they've already made up their mind about it.
Bloomberg U.S. Politics Editor Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. And you can read more of what's happening in the nation's capital at Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg terminal, and follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington, Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen.
All right, thanks, Nathan. It is 6:56 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Grain Report, and here's Bob Boone. Bob.
Americans use more than 380 billion single-use plastic bags a year. Or do they? Advocates in New York cited that figure when they pushed successfully for a statewide bag ban that takes effect next month. And it came up again in news reports when Oregon's ban took effect January 1st. Google search results show the statistics surfacing on millions of websites across the globe, in everything from blogs about sea turtles to municipal government websites. States across the country are relying on the data point to estimate their own plastic waste. The estimate is often linked to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, although it's unclear if the EPA EPA backs it. It appears in a 2016 blog post written by an EPA employee, which doesn't link to any data backing up the number. The EPA declined to comment on the record about where the figure came from. One industry group contends the data doesn't exist to prove that bag bans are the right thing to do. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Bob, thank you. We continue to watch shares of Walmart. It delivered a double whammy to investors as holiday sales did not meet expectations, and its outlook for the current year failed to impress investors. Shares are down about 0.7% this morning. Also continue to watch Apple, down 3.6% this morning. Futures lower. S&P futures down about 17 points. Dow futures down 185, and NASDAQ futures are down 77. 10-year Treasury up 13.30 seconds. Yield 1.53%. The yield on the 2-year 1.39%. And Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is stellar. This day will be a yummy one, 'cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday, the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
The Mona Lisa is only 30 inches tall. The world's hottest chili, 1 inch. And Napoleon, taller than a Great Dane, but only by 71 centimetres. Who says small can't make an impact? The Peugeot 108 Allure is now available for just $159 per month with $159 initial rental. Our small but mighty car that doesn't have to cost you a small fortune. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease, 48 months at 159, 18 plus, guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions apply. You will not own the car.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puzzle. Can you make a call given the data?
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification.
It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City, for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, global stocks drop with Apple delivering a revenue warning. The situation in China sending German investor confidence plunging as the world's third and fourth largest economies flirt with recession. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Tuesday. Here is your Tuesday morning price action. Equity futures negative, down 0.5% on the S&P 500. We're down 17 points. In the bond market, Treasuries set up as follows: yields lower on 10s by 4 basis points, on 30s down by 5, and sub 2% on a 30-year yield in America. And elsewhere in the FX market, just to round things out for you, in G10 at the moment, euro dollar comes in just 0.1%. Tom Keene front and center. Apple down, but by just 3.32% off the back of a revenue warning. morning.
Yeah, I mean, a revenue warrant, everybody went hysterical last night. Clearly, it's a supply and demand issue. We know the story, and I really thought we'd come in here and see -5, -6, -7%. It's not there. It's a little pullback. The chart, it's been on a moonshot. We all know that, but it's just a little bit of a pullback is all. I'm glad, John, you mentioned the German numbers. I really looked at that long-term malaise in Germany and the recent good data in Germany on expectations from September, and then boom, we reversed just abruptly.
Q4 in Germany, the economy stagnated. In Japan, deeply negative, a big contraction. This is going into the China growth scare.
Yeah.
So we have the number 3 and number 4 economies in the world, on the planet, flirting with recession before they're clipped around the head by a China growth scare. That's worrying.
I'm so glad you mentioned Japan, and the FT, they put it on the cover this morning as well. But to me, and I think I tweeted out this 2-3 days ago, that when that information came out, it was a bit of a surprise to see Japan hit, and that's before the mathematics of the virus.
And after the tax hike as well. The key word here, though, Lisa, temporary, transitory. You go through the Apple press release yesterday evening, and as I was reading it, there was the word. iPhone supply shortages will be temporarily affecting revenues worldwide. Demand for our products within China, yes, it's been affected, but there's just this takeaway that it's all transitory, it's all temporary.
This was exactly what I wanted to pick up on. When do we start to say this is temporary versus not perhaps a V-shaped recovery, that this is going to become something longer term? And there is sort of this tipping point implied in here. At a certain point, you can't make up for the supply and demand. One thing that was notable about Apple's announcement was that the pressure came from both the supply side, with factories remaining shut, but also the demand side, with Chinese consumers not buying. And the question is, are they just all going to come back and all buy, even though they're not necessarily making as much money and that their confidence has been deteriorated?
I would wrap it into a broader macro look. I haven't even looked at what the economic data is this week, but, it's just 2%, sub 2% U.S. GDP. Where does that go out to the Fed meeting in March? And overlaid on that is businesses of different pains looking at their business plan, whether it's Walmart. It seemed to me they were pulling it back a little bit on organic revenue growth that really wasn't all that good. And then you see what HSBC is doing, just as one bank that's having to adapt to global challenges.
HSBC might be cutting 35,000 jobs, I believe,
15%.
over the next 3 years. Front and centre for me this week, the big data point of the week, I think, PMIs out of Europe this coming Friday will be a big focus of this market. Looking ahead to it all, I'm really pleased to say David Kelly joins us now, JP Morgan Asset Management Chief Global Strategist. David, fantastic to have you with us. Talk to me about the message that you have for clients this Tuesday morning.
Well, yeah, I think the message is you've got to look at the sort of different paths that markets and the economy have taken. I think we've gotten a little complacent. This is 11 years into an expansion. Not much seemed to go on. So the markets keep on drifting higher in terms of equity markets. Rates keep on drifting lower. But the main story is really the one that you and Tom have been talking about, which is there are plenty of signs of the global economy slowing down. Very weak numbers out of Japan, weak numbers out of Europe, and China obviously in some trouble here. And in the U.S., we're looking at about 1% growth, maybe even less for the first quarter, and that brings us down to about 1.7% year over year. So there is this slowdown. We're not seeing recession yet, but given the slowdown and the troubles in the global economy, it does seem like the market is a little too exuberant here.
Well, David, let's take that analysis and take it a step further. What's the capital allocation decision? What are the decisions for capital allocation that supplement your worldview?
Well, you really if you start with the notion that valuations have just become a little unhinged from each other. What's expensive here? Bonds are expensive. U.S. equities are a bit expensive. What's cheap? Global equities are cheap. And so I'd be a little overweight global equity, international equities relative to the U.S., notwithstanding their short-term problems. And then also within the U.S. market, if you look at things like utilities and REITs above 20 times earnings, you look at financials down at about 13 times earnings. So there are pockets of value within the U.S. market, but generally speaking, I'd look carefully at valuations, and this is the kind of market in which I'd want to make sure I load up on the cheap stuff and make sure I'm not overweight the expensive stuff.
Had a profit warning from Apple 12 months ago, and then the stock doubled, David. The problem is, going into that profit warning, the stock was down by about 1/3 of 1% from the 2018 high. This is a stock that's near all-time highs as the company issues a revenue warning. Just in terms of how we're set up now versus 12 months ago, it just feels like night and day, David.
Yep. Well, and I think the key is if you're a long-term investor, and what I mean is you're not going to be spending the money in the next 4, 5, 6 years. You've got to stop trying to make a timing decision. The real question is never when, it is what. And you just are not going to be able to time the way markets behave in terms of bad news, good news. I mean, markets can work in very perverse ways in the short run. But in the long run, the economy does really matter. In the long run, it is about earnings and interest rates. And so you've just got to, try to take that long-term view. Recognize, what happens is you have this spread in valuation. Some things get very cheap, some things get very expensive. And then you have some sort of shock. And everybody has to pay attention again. And when they pay attention, the stuff that's most expensive tends to get hit the hardest. I'd not try to time this very much, but just recognize there's some areas of the market, some areas of global markets which are cheaper than others.
Let's get a little more specific. In the Bank of America Merrill Lynch February Fund Manager Survey that came out today, over half of those who responded said that the most crowded trade was the long U.S. tech growth stocks, but they also said that growth stocks are expected to outperform value stocks over the next 12 months. Attention here. They're overcrowded, yet will continue to outperform. Do you view this as an area that is particularly expensive and worth perhaps lightening up on?
Well, yeah, I think that's a fair point. And the key is that if you have not rebalanced, you're probably overweight anyway. And that's really the most important thing to look at because of the outperformance of large cap growth stocks. But as of the end of last week, the large cap growth sector, overall broad sector, was about 30% above its average PE ratio of the last 20 years. Small cap value was about 5% below. I think this is a time, if you can, to move a little bit of money out of large cap growth into small cap value to try to, be a little bit more normal in what is increasingly abnormal market.
David, the 30-year bond with a 198 handle, gold's going to edge up to 1,600 here in 2 cups of coffee. Is the market getting out front of the Fed? Or does the Fed have control of a situation where they can wait for the March meeting and the meetings after that to decide to cut rates?
I don't really think this is about the Fed or should be about the Fed because there's really no point in the Fed cutting rates. If the Fed cuts rates in March, it is not going to stimulate any economic growth and it'll simply leave them with less ammunition if we actually face a recession. I don't see a recession right now. But I think the bigger point is money is funneling towards richer and richer Americans and, the gap between rich and poor is increasing. But what that's doing is it's leaving a huge fund of money to be invested in markets. So, the average person might spend some money. Richer people tend to invest money, and that's pushing down yields, pushing up stock prices. And I think what's really what's fascinating to me, it's not about inflation or even the economy. It is that there's so much money pushing into the bond market that, for example, TIPS yields are now running at about 10 basis points negative on a 10-year tip, and that's crazy. You're locking in a negative real return for 10 years.
This is really important. Back up, David, and explain. That's a little, I think, jargon-laced for our listeners, including me. The TIPS yield. What's the TIPS yield, and what's it mean that it's negative by a little teensweens amount?
Well, what it is, these are Treasury inflation-protected securities. So what the government does is they give you a yield, and then they say, but we'll give you whatever inflation is. So basically it takes inflation out of the picture. This is what you get after inflation. But the point is that number has now turned negative. So essentially they say whatever inflation turns out to be, we will reward you for that. But apart from that, we will give you actually a negative return. Now, think about it. When you save money, the idea is you save money. You're disciplined enough to save because you want to have 11 apples in a year instead of 10 apples today. What this says is we'll give you 9 apples in a year, and people are still willing to do that.
That's called German negative rates. David Kelly, thank you so much for JP Morgan this morning helping out here. John, there's like 18 stories to go to. I'm going to Jonathan Tice's phenomenal walkthrough of the train wreck known as HSBC. I mean, first of all, they have an interim CEO. They're instituting, everybody was shocked at the size that they're going in. He says they had about half of the game into the price, and now it's another half as well. But on global banking, let me ask a difficult question. Are they done in America?
I don't know if they're done. That's for them to answer. I do think they're pivoting and pivoting hard. They're pivoting to where the revenue and profit comes from. It comes out of Asia, and that's where they want to focus.
Okay, it all comes out of Asia. How are are they perceived in London, a wise one? You've spent a few. I mean, are they like a dominant bank in London?
Aggressively ambitious on a global stage. And I think for many of our listeners, you only have to walk around any airport on the planet and you'll see advertising for HSBC. Right. I just wonder who's running HSBC right now, Tom. Is it the interim CEO or is it the chairman?
No.
Do we have an interim CEO that can stand up to the chairman?
If you got a Bloomberg terminal, John Tice kills it on HSBC this morning. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. Michael Bloomberg has qualified to join the other Democratic presidential candidates on the debate stage for the first time tomorrow night. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, he reached 19% support in the national survey released today. He is fourth with more than 10% support, meeting the DNC's debate threshold. Bernie Sanders is first with 31%. Michael Bloomberg is second. Joe Biden is third with 15%. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Senator Elizabeth Warren, who finished fourth in the poll with 12%, concluded her President's Day reaching out to Latino voters ahead of Saturday's Nevada caucus. Warren spoke in East Las Vegas.
Representation matters. Having a cabinet, having a team that is like the rest of America matters. We've got to have representation. Thank you.
The Boy Scouts of America filed for bankruptcy protection today. The filing in Wilmington, Delaware is an attempt to work out a compensation plan for sex abuse victims. 14 Americans evacuated from a cruise ship in Japan who tested positive for coronavirus are back in the U.S. Melanie Herring described the experience of flying back to the U.S. aboard a government-chartered flight.
We were all exposed to each other, just sitting next to each other in our seats. So, we don't know who was a carrier, who wasn't. We had to just protect ourselves.
Some were taken to a specialized national quarantine unit in Nebraska. The rest are under quarantine at Travis Air Force Base in California. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. Here is your Tuesday morning price action. Equity futures down 16 on the S&P 500, off by 0.5%, following 2 straight weeks of gains. Big week ahead on the economic data front. This coming Friday, you will have preliminary PMIs for the month of February from the United States and from Europe too. That is your early gauge, one of your first views on just how much damage the containment effort in China is doing to the global economy. That's where the focus is right now. The focus for Apple with a revenue warning. The stock doing okay. It's down, but down just 3%. From New York, this is Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
influence.
For centuries, Welsh farmers have been perfecting the balance between maintaining the spectacular landscapes of Wales while producing delicious lamb and beef. Lucky for us, we have everything we need from the elements: grass, rainwater, and a whole lot of pride. Sustainability is key as we continue to work in harmony with our surroundings to bring you a plate that's uniquely Welsh. It's in the taste. Learn more at eatwelshlamandwelshbeef.com.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one, 'cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 7:17 on Wall Street. And Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check of the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. Global stocks are taking a hit after Apple said it will miss revenue guidance because of the coronavirus. The cut to Apple's outlook is reviving concern about over-reliance on China. Meantime, China's reporting the lowest number of new cases since changing its method of detection. A respiratory disease expert advising the government expects infections to peak later this month. The White House is considering new restrictions on exports of cutting-edge technology to China. That's according to sources who say it's a push aimed at limiting Chinese progress in developing its own passenger jets. And HSBC plans to slash about 35,000 jobs over 3 years. The overhaul of its US and European operations will result in a charge of more than $7 billion. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
Hannah George, thank you. And watching shares of Apple down 3.2% in early trading. S&P futures also lower, down 17 points. Dow futures down 180. NASDAQ futures down 72. The DAX in Germany is down 0.8%. 10-year Treasury up 13/32. Yield 1.54%. The yield on the 2-year 1.39%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.8% or 95 cents at 51.10 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.25% or $4.20 at 15.90.60 an ounce. The euro 1.0823 against the dollar. British pound 1.3036, and the yen is at 109.72. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. John Farrow dazzling for Valentine's Day. 4 dozen roses. He dazzles right now by noting euro 112 to a 108 and breaking down this morning. Weaker euro. John, radio, it really works. It's an elegant chart. Weaker, like it's 107 ugly. Is a layup.
Charts on radio.
Just ugly. It's brutal. The lows since April 2017, I believe, on euro dollar right now.
It's the way it's slower.
Oh, it's brutal. And Lisa mentioned the Bank of America survey that came out earlier this morning. I'll pull out the view on the dollar. Net 54% of those surveyed said the dollar is overvalued, the second highest level since 2002. It's got to be painful out there for some people, Lisa.
Well, and it has been for 2 months now, because heading into 2020, the big consensus trade was finally we were going to see a weaker dollar. I remember Jeff Gundlach coming out and saying this was his highest conviction trade heading into the year. And look where we are right now with the euro. No sign of strengthening given those data, the confidence data out of Germany.
Very quickly, I'll get the chart out. I'll gussy it up. But it's for those of you that know point and figure, it is a textbook double high pull top, which says, I'm saying it says 107 is like a done. 2 standard deviations is 107.93 for those keeping score to 4 digits in your car. HSBC, John Tice showed why John Tice is John Tice today. And what I knew but learned, John, is it's just an Asia operation, and it's always been. Hong Kong is 4 times bigger for their business than mainland China.
And that's where the focus is going to be. Slightly odd, though, just to mention the leadership situation. To have an interim CEO in Noel Quinn, making aggressive strategic moves at the bank before he secured the role is just slightly strange.
How aggressive is this, though? This is basically consolidating their position in Asia. They're basically taking any money that they're generating, that they're saving from some of these cuts over in the U.S. and in Europe, and they're putting them into other Asian economies.
Well, they're getting out of markets very clearly here. I mean, permeating John Tice's note is the exit from markets.
Draw a distinction, Tom, between radical and aggressive. I'm not saying it's a radical strategic shift. I just mean it's aggressive, considering the guy doesn't have the full-time role and he's turning around and saying we could cut 35,000 jobs in 3 years. Not typically what you expect from someone who hasn't secured the CEO role as yet.
Yeah, let's go to the negative yield. How was the real yield last week? I mean, it's all changed now. We've gone through to a 198.89.
You didn't watch it?
No, I didn't. No, I TiVo it. I got it like on a repeat.
Lots of people
Me and
do.
Vet Bill loop it all weekend.
And then you watch it afterwards.
No, we just put it on and we sort of drifted and watched it.
I just take the extra 2 viewers that I get from Vet Bill at home. Look, not much of a real yield is the story at the moment. Where's CPI? Where's core CPI?
Well,
just north of 2%?
Yeah, but I did the 30-year bond back a million years, like back pre-Volcker, and there was one time it was worse than this, and that's it.
So core CPI, just north of 2%, right? Yields 2s out to 30s, all below that level.
Well, it's interesting to see, going back to that Bank of America Merrill Lynch fund manager survey, everyone's expecting a deflationary environment. In that environment, what do you buy? And interestingly, there's a question baked into this survey. People are still buying tech stocks. Is that the best deflationary trade out there? I don't really understand the logic necessarily there. Is it bonds? I don't necessarily understand the logic there, considering the fact that you're going to have an increasing deficit. It's unclear how much the Fed is going to drop rates in the near term.
Yeah, gold, John, with a one print back in January above 1,600, but essentially it's right buttressed up against resistance, and Jeff Curry looks smart in that.
Tom, I'd say look at the gold-copper ratio. It's a really, really nice snapshot of where appetite is for global growth.
Listen to you.
Broke out at the start of this year. It's kind of stayed at those elevated levels, and until that really comes in, until we really see that come in, this market hasn't adjusted.
He also follows the roses chocolate ratio.
Yeah, which is
what's that?
Is it going up or going down? I think
chocolate went out at our house.
But a key take on the gold copper ratio, we're still at elevated levels. And as everybody's talking about transitory and a V-shaped recovery,
well said.
I'm not seeing that adjustment in gold or copper at the moment. I'm not seeing that at all.
Can I ask a question? Is anybody actually going to sell Apple shares today off this news? I mean, like call up and, I've got my half a share.
No,
it's a quarter.
I think I think most people still think this is transitory. To John's point, and he highlighted how much they said temporary, transitory, et cetera. People are buying that story right now. And we have economists on this show. They come in, they say, this is going to be a classic V-shaped recovery.
Well,
what's the tipping point for it not to be?
You've got Dan Ives in the 9, right?
We did have Dan Ives, and then his plane got delayed, so he had to move.
Happens. But still, guys like Dan Ives, what are they going to do? Put a sell recommendation on Apple today?
I don't know as yet. Look, the reason I'm uncomfortable with this, a lot of people brought up the fact that the stock doubled the last time we had a warning out of Apple, and that might well be true. But the stock was also down around about 30% over several months going into that profit warning. This stock has doubled going into a warning around revenue, and people are very, very comfortable with the idea that this is consumption delayed and not destroyed.
Mohamed El-Arian put out a really interesting idea, which is this stagflationary concept, that when you're having both the supply and the demand side both being destroyed, that's a big concern. That's slowdown. And at what point is that going to be permanent? And that's some big question as we get some of these numbers.
Magda Desai did a great book on this called Hubris, which is, is exactly what you just described, Lisa. And it's just the equilibrium points. If one line's moving, that's bad. But if both lines are moving, you get all sorts of noise. Desai really emphasizes the noise factors that's out there. What do roses cost on February 18th, Lisa? I mean, are they giving them away? Like if you go to, Whole Paycheck today, are they giving out a dozen roses?
Whole Paycheck.
I hear at Farrah's apartment, they're giving out free roses.
I think about $3. Probably $3 or $4.
How'd that work
out? I took them back on Friday.
Of course he did.
So I went in, I was unhappy with the quality of them. And when he saw me walk back in, he said, "Oh no." I said, "You're damn right, they're dead." And he said, "You didn't water them." I said, "Because they were dead." And then he said, "Be honest, did you water them?" And I said, "I didn't put them in water because they were dead." And then he changed them.
You are harsh.
So the bunch I took back were beautiful.
The best customer
Beautiful.
ever.
I'm a great customer wherever I go.
You're just charming. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Vision Express understands we're inspired by what we see. Right now, with every pair of glasses, you'll get varifocal lenses half price, plus our 60-day total satisfaction guarantee. Book your eye test online today. Vision Express. Vision taken seriously. Terms and conditions apply. See in store for details.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. Equity futures 2 hours out from the opening bell in New York. Negative 14 points and down 0.4%. 1%. In the FX market, the euro down and off by 0.16% against the dollar. Euro dollar, the lowest since April 2017, off the back of some German investor confidence numbers that, to be honest, were pretty dreadful and ahead of some PMIs later this week, Tom.
John, just off the commercial break, euro breaks down again on 108.19. I mean, folks, we're watching this to 4 digits, but to John's point, there's just no bid on euro right now.
At the moment, and why would there be? Because the data out of Europe is not pretty. We get the PMIs a little bit later this week. Then into next week, you will get German business confidence as well. And given what is happening in China at the moment, it's unlikely you'll see a lift there either.
Yeah, I want to go to a headline, John, and we can do this quickly because I know we've got to go to our important guest. This is a merger in active management. It is 2 legendary names. Of course, John Templeton, Sir John, merging with Franklin years ago. Of course, they have the Muni Bond House and what they do out in California. Franklin Templeton will buy Baltimore's Legg Mason, which is the mother of all value shops. And it just shows how scale is the attempt at future profits in the business. There will be, I would suggest respectfully, many, many more of these to come.
And increasing pressure to do many, many more of these. I believe that Tryon took a stake in Legg Mason quite recently, pushing for more cost cuts to perhaps get more scale. In 2017, of course, we had the Janus Henderson tie-up. We had the Standard Life Aberdeen tie-up. And to your point, Tom, some really big, well-known names looking for a dance partner in the world of asset and wealth management.
Right now, Legg Mason, 10-year track record. And, of course, what's the takeout price? Is it $50 a share?
$50, yeah.
Let me do that. I can do that on the Bloomberg, folks. Can you get...
I will say there's an interesting question here is if the market does turn down, will that accelerate the consolidation that we've been seeing among asset managers? And that's a theory out there that they've managed to stay separate for as long as they have. And when we talk about the market pressures right now, very much China front and center.
Right now, if they get $50 a share, 9.2% would be the return over 10 years on Legg Mason. It gets it back pretty much to where the highs were in 2015. Right now on Apple, with Michaud of Switzerland, Neil Campling joins us right now with a broader thematic view on Apple. Neil, how do you take Apple over to other tech companies in China? Is that a legitimate exercise, or is it just too much guessing?
Well, I think, for one thing, Apple is the first major who have explicitly come out with a warning for the Q1 to say they will be impacted, even though they haven't actually given us the quantifiable of how big the impact is. And we'd expect many others to follow. There are the supply chain risks for Apple itself, given that Apple is 12% of global semiconductor demand purchases. There's also the fact that if we look at the S&P 500 in totality, to date we've had earnings calls from 364 companies of the S&P 500. Of those, only 34 have said that there will be an impact from coronavirus in their guidance or modified guidance in some capacity due to the virus. So the vast majority have not mentioned the virus, either because they just do not know yet, or in a few instances because there won't be an impact because perhaps they're a utility company. But the majority, I think, it's fair to say, just don't yet know how big the impact will be. But this is an ongoing dynamic situation, which is still to play out, I think, for many companies.
And Neil, I've been surprised that for many companies we haven't seen the kind of news that was dropped by Apple yesterday. But I guess to your point, they just can't get their hands around this yet. What's been amazing for many of us reading through the Southside research notes, getting our hands around the analyst community and their views, is the T word. Just keeps coming up again and again and again. Transitory, temporary, transitory, temporary. Neil, at what point do you look at things and say, perhaps this won't be as transitory as some people think?
I think that's when we have to start thinking that if you think that in China specifically, given the size of the economy, there is effectively no red envelope season for this year. Now we're seeing some data, such as the German ZEW data this morning, such as the B of A fund manager surveys. They're all now being impacted in terms of lower confidence. We are seeing issues in terms of hitting European confidence. And the risk, I think, is that there won't be this snapback potentially in Q2 because of this kind of hangover effect that affects many industries and is not just specific to pure Chinese demand. So the risks of 5G smartphones in the second half of the year could be impacted. Travel, tourism, retail is obviously having the brunt of some issues as well. We've heard from the likes of Under Armour last week and Ralph Lauren as well, trying to give some sort of qualification around how risky this could be going forward.
Neil,
so I do think that we haven't impacted that yet, but it will be an issue.
Neil, with all your experience at Maribud Securities, as you look at the broader effects and implications and response to the coronavirus, I'm wondering what you're seeing in some of the emerging Asian economies. A lot of people saying that China is responding with more stimulus, that they'll be able to stave off some of the economic slowdown. Some of these other economies less prepared to do so. What type of demand cannibalization, what kind of loss in demand are we going to see from those nations?
That's a great question. I think that we're already seeing, for example, revisions down to Singapore GDP, for example. We've had South Korea politicians coming out just this morning and talking about a risk of an existential crisis if it's not controlled. You're seeing impacts on auto vendors in South Korea. You would naturally expect some fallout into other countries such as Vietnam. So the supply chain that exists around China is essential for the whole of the economic region.
What is your study, and I say with respect, your guesstimate of the elasticity of cutting expenses for industrial and tech and TMT? Do they have the wiggle room to cut costs fast given revenue prospects that are slower?
I think what we generally see, if you're a company that's reliant on industrial or you're tech heavy, it's very difficult to reduce that. If you think of if you're a capacity utilization focused semiconductor fab, you might not need the people that you would need at Hon Hai's iPhone City, but you have to keep those fabs at 90% plus capacity utilization rates. Otherwise, your margins get negatively impacted very quickly, and it's also very slow to increase capacity again once it's been cut. So it's often not something you can just dial down for 2 weeks and not have an impact thereafter.
Neil, I'd like to turn to something else just to wrap things up, and that's the Trump administration, according to several reports, considering new restrictions on exports of cutting-edge technology into China. This is something that over the last month or so has been increasingly overlooked because of what has been happening with the coronavirus. How closely are you looking at those kind of moves potentially coming up this year, Neil?
I think it's something which we described as an ongoing IP war between China and the US, which is very concerning for supply chains. For one thing, I think that we've had obviously the blacklisting of Huawei last year, but actually what ended up happening was that Huawei just got component supplies from other countries outside of the US and displacing the US component companies. So the US is now looking at other tactics. If you basically banned equipment being shipped out to China and not giving those licenses, it has ramifications for many companies around the world. And I think basically what is happening here is we have a superpower battle to which superpower nation becomes the leader for 5G technologies, because many reports suggest there's $14 trillion of economic gain potential between now and 2035 from 5G. And that, I think, is at the heart of what's going on in this battle.
A huge issue right now between the United States and China, and Europe, Tom. Europe finding it somewhere stuck somewhere in between.
And Prime Minister Johnson may be more in between than the others in between. His trip is canceled, or somebody's trip is canceled.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I think we saw that over the weekend. He's not getting along with the president of the United States. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report, brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university, in the latest U.S. News and World Report, college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Here's Nathan Hager.
Tom, John, Lisa, good morning. The big news in science, technology, engineering, and math you just mentioned. The Trump administration is considering new export restrictions on cutting-edge technology to China. 4 people familiar with the discussion say it's part of a push to further clamp down on Huawei's access to vital semiconductors and to limit development of passenger jets by the country. Senior officials could decide in the next week and a half on whether to block China from buying jet engines made by a joint venture of General Electric and France-based Safran. They're designed for the Chinese-made C919 passenger jet, which is currently undergoing flight tests. Some administration officials want more aggressive efforts to limit China's technological rise and contain what they see as potential threats to national security. Demand for smartphones is likely to fall this year by as many as 20 million units given the coronavirus outbreak. That's according to a note from Morgan Stanley, which also forecasts consumers may spend more on medical products, suffer a loss of income, and face potentially higher unemployment. And to some higher flying news, I guess you could say. If you have the right stuff to be one of NASA's so-called Artemis generation astronauts, this could be your chance. Applications are being accepted to become an astronaut between March 2nd and the 31st. It is a rigorous process, as you might imagine. So are the requirements. Not only do you need to be a U.S. citizen, but you also have to hold a master's degree in a STEM field. Astronaut candidates also need to pass the long-duration space flight physical. Has become a famous part of NASA astronaut training. New class will train to travel to several locations across the solar system, including the moon and Mars. That is today's Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Jonathan?
Nathan, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get you some news, shall we, worldwide. Your headlines from New York with Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, John. Lisa, Tom. Michael Bloomberg has qualified to join the other Democratic presidential candidates on the debate stage for the first time tomorrow night. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, he reached 19% support in the national survey. He is fourth with more than 10%, meeting the DNC's debate threshold. Bernie Sanders is first with 31%. Michael Bloomberg is second. Joe Biden is third with 15%. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Meanwhile, Sanders spoke in Tacoma, Washington about the Democratic Party establishment.
They're trying to figure out all kinds of ways, how do we stop Bernie and the movement? But they are not going to succeed.
Democratic presidential candidates are campaigning ahead of Nevada's caucuses on Saturday, and the state's Democratic Party says more than 26,000 people participated in the first 2 days of early voting. Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez.
The first day and the last day tend to be the most attended days of early vote in other contexts, and we're going to make sure our goal is to get this right.
President Trump heads out west this week for a series of campaign fundraisers, rallies, and official government events. The president starts his swing today in California with fundraisers in Beverly Hills and a meeting with organizers of the 2028 Olympics, which takes place in Los Angeles. Later this week, the president will be in Arizona, Colorado, and Nevada the day before Saturday's Democratic caucuses. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. The debates this coming Wednesday. Who does them this week, Tom? MSNBC? Is it MSNBC and NBC? Can they actually ask a question on China? Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be really helpful.
Can we have a little segment?
Don't hold your breath on that.
Yeah, what's the trade policy right now?
What are the positions of all of them, considering what's happening
absolutely.
with 5G, considering what's happening with Europe at the moment?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that would be really illuminating.
Wouldn't hold your breath.
I'm not going to hold my breath. We know what's going to happen on Wednesday. It's the purity contest.
It's tomorrow.
Between those on the left. Who's the most pure?
I would suggest Kevin
to be the candidate for the Democrats.
Raucous.
Come on. Equity futures. They are down 0.4%. This is Bloomberg Radio.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. With the NASCAR season now underway, the racing governing body announced a deal with Verizon intended to give fans at its 12 racetracks better access for their phones and solve a long, simmering headache over dead zones at the sprawling venues. The deal will improve connectivity at the 12 tracks owned by NASCAR, a problem fans have complained about for years. That's even when they had Sprint and Nextel as their sponsors. Originally from Japan, Naomi Osaka beat 23-time Grand Slam winner Serena Williams to win the U.S. Open in 2018 and followed it by winning the Australian Open the following year. Now, popular streaming service Netflix will make a documentary on the two-time Grand Slam winner. They're still looking for a title for the film. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr, brought to you by Grainger, America's trusted source for industrial and safety supplies. Visit Grainger.com.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard? or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 6.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing, gotta check me your vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back. While Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Walmart delivering a double whammy to investors as holiday sales missed expectations and its outlook for the current year failed to impress investors. Shares are down 0.9% in early trading. Franklin Resources has reached an agreement to buy Legg Mason for $50 per share of common stock in an all-cash transaction. It's a move that'll create an investing giant with more than $1 trillion in assets. And DuPont removing Chief Executive Mark Doyle and other top leadership, once again handing oversight of the chemicals company to Executive Chairman Ed Breen to accelerate an efficiency drive. U.S. stock index futures falling along with European shares after Apple said quarterly sales would miss forecasts. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 14 points. Dow futures down 167. NASDAQ futures down 61. The DAX in Germany is down about 0.8%. 10-year Treasury up 11/32, yield 1.54%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.39%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.9% or $1 to $51.05 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.2% or $3.40 at $15.89.80 an ounce. The euro 1.0817 against the dollar. British pound 1.3037. The yen 109.76. And just watching Apple, it's down 3.1% in early trading. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Thanks so much, Karen. Greatly appreciate it. This is perfect timing. He's with Standard Charter, and he is Stephen Englander out of Yale University. And John, I will not mince words. He is the definitive cross-rates analyst. He is one that looks not at the majors, euro, dollar, yen, sterling. We call that cable, John. You may be familiar.
We do call that cable.
Speaking of which, there's
familiar with that.
Cable on London Radio. John Farrow darkening the door to do the cable. The cable's a wire under the ocean, John.
It's
this is long ago and
Thanks
far
for
away.
that.
Steve Englander, exquisite on cross rates.
Hey, Steve, great to catch up with you. He joins us from Standard Charter, the global head of G10 FX Research. Steve, let's begin.
I'm blushing over the telephone.
Let's not begin with cable, shall we? Let's begin with euro dollar. The euro threatening to break 108, perhaps a 107 handle just around the corner. Right now, euro dollar 108. 17. Steve, we've been asking over the last couple of weeks just how much downside is there on this currency pair, considering the lows of the last 5-6 years? Is 103, 105, those kind of levels?
Look, I think that the dollar's been the preeminent safe haven, along with Swissy and yen, very typical. Euro just hasn't behaved that way. I think that the Europeans are slow to invoke fiscal policy, to discuss it in a serious sort of way. And the knee-jerk reaction of the ECB to say, oh, if coronavirus gets worse, we can cut rates, when nobody thinks that's going to work, I think has been damaging to euro. That said, it's gone a fair distance, and they're more exposed to coronavirus than the U.S., but it doesn't mean that the U.S. is not exposed.
Steve, let's get to the data then. PMI's coming up this Friday out of Europe. It's the preliminary read for the month of February. How ugly is that data going to look, Steve?
It could be pretty bad. Talking with some corporates, comment has been you can't sell 95% of a mousetrap. If there's if there's a component that's missing that you've been unable to get from one of your Asian factories, the whole production line globally is slowed down. It doesn't apply to everyone, but there's a certain set of products, I think, where you're going to see that really being meaningful.
I'm wondering, Stephen, how much of what we're seeing is the pain trade just playing out? A lot of people heading into 2020, euro was set to outperform, the dollar was set to weaken. It's been anything but. Are people just getting squeezed out at this point?
Well, people have been squeezed out of euro for a month now, I think. It just didn't perform coming out of the gate, except for maybe the first couple of days of the year. I think they're trying to hold on to some of their emerging market positions, and they buy them back on any sign of optimism. I think that the market still expects that maybe coronavirus doesn't disappear, but it doesn't grow in intensity.
Stephen, what are the elasticities you see right now in all these cross rates? I'm looking at the euro chart, and it's ugly, trying to find a bid. And, it's got a bounce maybe to 111, but it's not a constructive chart. Go over to the standard charter currencies and how they're bouncing off the China news as well. What are people actually doing with their speculation and their hedging in the Asian Pacific Rim currencies?
I think that they're trying to hold on as much as possible to the ones that are not direct as exposed to China, not the ones that have a heavy tourism from China.
Right. Okay, so you're describing Indonesia. Let's go to Indonesia now and tell me how you frame Indonesia. For the mere mortals like me listening to this, Steve, you're in the trenches on this. What do you do with Indonesia rupiah right now?
I think most clients are trying to hold on to it. I mean, it's sold off a little bit from its highs, but it's not sold off a lot. The yield advantage is very strong, and I think that that's why some currencies are being more robust than others. MEX would be the other one, right? It has the advantage of being close to the U.S., preferred as a supply chain, and having some yield.
Also, Mexico's Pacific Rim, now that I think about it.
Had a rate cut from Mexico in the last couple of weeks as well, Steve, and I'm just wondering where the next policy move comes from. We had this big easing cycle that started really going into the summer of last year. Coming into this year, it was expected that things would settle down on that front a little bit. As you see things right now, Steve, where do we see the next move coming from?
Well, I think that countries and central banks in this world, almost all of them are biased towards easing in the face of this, that their priority is to try and maintain demand and maintain activity in the first instance. So I think that if we see coronavirus getting worse, inflation, most of them don't have inflation, and right now it's a little bit secondary to maintaining activity. Right. If it stays longer, they may have to back away from the easing bias.
Stephen, thank you so much. We're out of time, but we got to get you back on again. There's just too many questions here. Mr. Englander with the Standard Chartered Bank running their G10 currencies. as well. Futures at negative 16, Dow futures at negative 171, the VIX up almost 1.60 points, 15.28. Lisa?
I think it's interesting what he said about emerging markets, that everybody is using weakness to add to their emerging markets positions, that they're doubling down on that, despite the fact, particularly in Asia, as you've talked about really well, Indonesia, how are they going to handle it? Singapore, I know they're not emerging market, but they came out and they posted their biggest budget deficit since at least 1997 today, talking about the amount that they're spending on the coronavirus. I have to wonder how much is already baked in and how much more there is to go. And given the fact that emerging markets continues to be a consensus trade, despite all of this, is interesting.
Let's look at a foreign exchange called Apple. It's up $5 off the bottom this morning, John.
A foreign exchange called Apple. It could be its own country.
It could be its own country.
Granted, the
I mean,
stock is
Swiss
down
National Bank owns how many shares? They own more than I do.
The stock is down by 3% in early trading. The whole trade is that things will get better as the year grows older, that you should look through this temporary hit to global growth. That's the consensus view. I don't know if it's necessarily the right view. You're going to take us out?
I'll take us out. That's very good. Morning. Futures negative 16. Dow futures at negative 171. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday, the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing, gotta check me a vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back. While Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
We have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene with Lisa Bramwitz. Thrilled you're with us this morning. 14 news stories this morning, and they are a movable feast. John, I want to go to Euro in a moment, which we're both watching carefully. Apple down off the news, supply-demand shocks in China. We all know the story. Right now, breaking out to new pre-market highs to make that 324, 325. Down we go to 310, and we come out now almost to 317, so we're down 2.5%. HSBC, what is it going to lay off? 15%?
35,000 jobs over 3 years, perhaps, yeah.
You know, and they're managing the message, and we can dive into that as well. But I agree with you, John. The markets really get my attention with a 30-year bond under 2%. And, John, the euro, you and I have been watching it tick by tick. I believe right now 1.0815. That's new weakness this morning.
Let's pick up on euro dollar, shall we? The lowest level since spring of 2017, April to be precise. And I believe the March 11th meeting just got a whole lot more interesting for the ECB. If anyone thought that policy would be on autopilot this year, the pressure on the European Central Bank and President Christine Lagarde to do something is going to be immense, especially if the PMIs on Friday are as dreadful as many people expect them to be.
The blended index DXY breaks out the new strength now. Not a big deal, 99.27, but that shows euro weaker, DXY stronger.
And there's a question how much this is a Europe story and how much this is very much a German story. I mean, the idea of the numbers that we got with investor confidence plunging, signaling that we're not going to get any kind of recovery is really alarming. It could potentially only get worse due to the potential drop in demand from China. How much is this really in the hands of the German government in order to create some sort of fiscal stimulus, some sort of momentum?
I agree with you, because if you're putting faith in monetary policy right now, I have no idea what more can be done. LVMH, let's talk about LVMH just quickly.
Let's talk about that.
There's a company that might be in a little bit of trouble this quarter because of demand coming from
I thought you were
luxury retail.
But they're being paid to borrow.
Okay, they're being paid to borrow. One. So they were paid to borrow 2 euro tranches issued to raise money to finance the deal with Tiffany's, right? Negative yields, great, paid to borrow. The ECB then added those brand new LVMH euro-denominated bonds to its corporate bond buying program just last week. So picture that. That's the scene in Europe right now. On its knees, economically speaking, in places like Germany, on the brink of recession, and an ECB that has set the tone in the European debt market, whereby if you're highly rated, you can borrow with a negative yield, you can go and make an acquisition, and the bonds that have been issued will then end up on the ECB balance sheet. So my question is quite simple. Let's get away from LVMH just very quickly. If you have a recession in Germany and across the continent in Europe, and they're reluctant to do fiscal easing, I don't see how the ECB can make anything better whatsoever, given what they've already done.
And Christine Lagarde admitted this. She actually came out and basically said this much and said, you guys have to get on this. The question is, Germany, it seems, averse to this. I mean, what's the political pressure? And they can't even necessarily get some sort of consensus or a government in place with any kind of majority at this point. How are they going to get fiscal stimulus?
Well, the populism issue is a backdrop to all these different stories, including a debate tomorrow in the United States. But within all of this and looking at what we see on the Bloomberg screen, I'm sorry, what's different is the 30-year bonds under 2%. And euro just gives way. And I want to make clear, folks, there's not been one iota of a bid on euro, stronger euro this morning. Right now, 108.16 on euro.
I'll go back to that quote from Alberto Gallo of Algebris from the last couple of weeks. It just seems the whole world is long central banks and short growth. That seems to be the story at the moment. Long rates, if you're long utilities, if you're long software stocks, if you're long duration, it's just long central banks and get long rates.
And there's a question of how much more central banks can actually do.
Right now, we're going to touch on a politics story for a moment. It is, of course, reigned supreme this morning. We had two polls, a Marist poll, more of a national poll into Nevada and South Carolina, and then a Monmouth University poll, which was very specifically on Virginia as well. Elaine Kamarek has been very good to join us from Brookings. She's a senior fellow there with some important books on presidents. Elaine, I believe we have a debate, and our Kevin Cirilli would suggest the debate will be contentious, raucous, particularly if Mr. Bloomberg shows up and is part of that debate as well. How does a grizzled pro like you look at one of these debates? What do you look for that we miss?
Well, I think what you look for is who is going to have the greatest effect on the upcoming contest. So it's not necessarily who, quote, wins the evening, but what the momentum is coming out of the debate into the contest, because we are now in the real thing. So, for instance, in the New Hampshire debate a couple weeks ago, we saw a stellar performance by Senator Amy Klobuchar, and that translated immediately into support from previously uncommitted voters in New Hampshire.
In your study of these elections, are there too many candidates for the debate tomorrow? Like should somebody fall on the sword here before the debate to clear it up for either the liberals or the moderates?
Well, actually, the field is cut down considerably for this debate. Sure. It's a much smaller field than we have had, and it's a very interesting field because we have two strong left-of-center candidates, especially Senator Sanders, and of course the introduction of Michael Bloomberg into this mix is going to really shake things up, and we will see if he has actual voter appeal when he's on his own as opposed to in a packaged setting like a TV commercial.
So, Elaine, you mentioned Mike, so let's talk about him, the founder majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News. As we've seen in the previous debates, if you make a search in the polls, you'll become the focus of attention. Happened to Mayor Pete Buttigieg just a couple of weeks back, and most people assume it will happen to Mr. Bloomberg this coming Wednesday. Elaine, how willing will they be to make that pivot, to sharpen their sword, so to speak, and aim at Mr. Bloomberg himself?
Well, that's going to be very interesting because I think that we have a little bit of precedent in Tom Steyer. People are reluctant to be too mean to these front-running billionaires because, in fact, Steyer and Bloomberg have been very generous with their money all the way across the board to the Democrats. So a Democratic candidate up there, on the one hand, would like to take down Michael Bloomberg a couple notches. On the other hand, doesn't want to make him too mad because we and the Democrats, everybody needs his money going into the fall.
There's also a question about how much people are going to be looking for some sort of message which is being given by the populists versus the electability argument that the candidate could actually beat President Trump in an election. How much do you think, where do you think the Democratic Party is tipping at this point in terms of the importance of both of those things, a sort of driving message versus just beating Trump?
Well, I think it's still mostly on the beating Trump page. However, Bernie Sanders has a very, very coherent message. It's been a constant message, and he has a very devoted core in the Democratic Party. What we're going to see, probably not in Nevada or South Carolina, but we'll see for the first time on Super Tuesday, is whether or not he can expand his base. Some people say it is both a ceiling and a floor.
Well, where are you on that? I mean, that was my question. You just answered my question, but where are you on that? Is there any evidence that the senator from Vermont can, quote unquote, expand his base?
There's a little bit of evidence, absolutely, but not much. In New Hampshire, he seems to have done not really as well as he did 4 years ago. On the other hand, he is moving slightly among African-American voters, which is something he hasn't done in the past. So there's a little bit of evidence that he's getting some traction beyond his traditional base.
Elaine, thank you so much. Elaine Kmark with Brookings this morning in Harvard, joining us here, and particularly with her important books on presidential history as well. Futures negative 16, Dow futures negative 63. We're on the Euro watch at 108.15 as well. John, I want to talk about HSBC. I mean, we continue to go back to this 35,000 jobs as well. Why is an Asian bank out of London?
Standard Chartered is too.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a history though.
There's a huge history.
We're going back hundreds and hundreds of years. I think to the middle of the 1800s, when HSBC was formed out of Hong Kong, but with a huge relationship back to the United Kingdom, of course.
I get it.
So it makes sense that it was always listed in the UK. That always made sense for me, at least.
Does it make sense now, though? To me, I was thunderstruck by the profit capture of their Hong Kong shop versus everything else.
But this is what they're doing. They're doubling down on their Asian presence, right? I mean, this is sort of the magnitude. And I think, John, that this sort of raises your question, which is, do they have the leadership in place to be taking this aggressive of a move at this point?
Well, right now they don't. So I assume this is the chairman that's driving a lot of this and not the interim CEO.
It seems to be very contentious.
I'm confused by the whole thing at the moment. The CEO's trying to prove his worth to try and get the job full time. He's an interim leader. And then you've got the chairman who's pushing for a lot of this as well, I assume.
Yeah, the contentious is what I saw in the literature this morning. Right now with our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom. John, Lisa, former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg has qualified to join the other Democratic presidential candidates on the debate stage for the first time tomorrow night. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, he reached 19% support in the national survey released today. He is fourth with more than 10% support, meeting the DNC's debate threshold. Bernie Sanders is first with 31%. Michael Bloomberg is second. Joe Biden is third with 15%. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Democratic presidential candidates are campaigning ahead of Nevada's caucuses on Saturday. And the state's Democratic Party says more than 26,000 people participated in the first 2 days of early voting. Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez discussed the process.
We have same-day registration in Nevada, thanks to the leadership of Democrats in Nevada who put forth these reforms that enhance participation. So a lot of people who are going in there are registering to vote for the first time or changing from independent to Democrat because they want to throw Donald Trump out and elect Democrats. That also takes time.
The swollen Pearl River appears to have crested in Mississippi's capital of Jackson at just under 37 feet. But the region is not yet out of the woods. Weather Prediction Center meteorologist David Hammock says the ongoing flooding is near historic levels.
It is the highest stage that we've seen in the past 37 years. We have to go back to 1983 when the last major flood occurred along the Pearl River. That was in May of 1983 when the stage got up to 39.5 feet.
Governor Tate Reeves warned the hundreds of evacuees not to rush back home until they get the all clear. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much indeed. That's the news. Let's get you some price action. Tom mentioning Apple, now down just 2.27% in this morning's early market trading, Tom, off the back of a revenue warning. This belief that all of this will be temporary seems to be the base case for many people out there this morning.
I'm not. That's not my opinion or your opinion. That's clearly what we're observing within market action, and not only on that, but on everything. So look at the airlines alone. Is one example of the tumult there.
Equity futures down just 0.4% of the S&P 500, negative 14 points. To give you a feel of the bond market, Tom said it all morning. 30-year yields south of 2% at 199 and coming down 5 basis points. So the whole curve south of 2% now. Twos out to 30. Some really interesting data points coming up through the week. PMIs from the United States, preliminary reads for the month of February from both the US and from Europe as well. The Eurozone PMIs coming up this Friday. Speaking of Europe, the euro weaker. Euro dollar breaking down the lowest level since April 2017. Euro dollar 108.16. From New York this morning, good morning. You're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize-change.
I'm Captain Obvious, and every day people book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like. A hate like is when you like Becky's picture of another waterfall even though you kind of hate it because she's there and you're on the train next to a mouth breather. Don't hate like Becky's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com. Hotels.com. Be there, do that.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I'd train to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I'd go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website, 18 plus UK residents.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella. Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday, the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 8:17 on Wall Street. Futures are lower this morning. We go to the first word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bailey Lipschultz. Bailey, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. As you said, stocks have remained under pressure since the last time we spoke. After that Apple sales warning, the Dow was down 156 points, S&P lower by 15, with the NASDAQ off 62 points. U.S. 10-year yields is at 1.54%, and European markets are trading lower, led by losses in the UK and Germany. Back in the U.S. on the economic front, at 8:30, Empire Manufacturing, and at 10 o'clock, NAHB Housing Market Index. Apple is down 2.3% after saying the fallout from the coronavirus would cause it to miss sales targets. Walmart fell after holiday sales, and its outlook for the year missed analyst expectations. And Medtronic's quarterly revenue missed estimates. Shares are down 2.4%. Regarding deals, Franklin Resources will acquire Legg Mason for almost $4.5 billion. And wrapping things up, Morgan Stanley raised its Tesla bull case to $1,200 a share. Alliance Data cut to market perform at JMP, and Eaton was raised to buy from neutral over at UBS. Live from the First Word Breaking News Desk, I'm Bailey Lipschultz. Karen.
Bailey, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type Squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate that, Karen, this morning. Again, we're looking at futures are doing a little better than they were 2 hours ago. Negative 18 is now negative 13. That's not all that bad. And John and I are watching Euro, which is right, I believe, a new low, 108.14 on Euro as well. On HSBC, our global Wall Street conversation of the day, Allison Williams joins us from Bloomberg Intelligence. Allison, I read every word of Jonathan Tice, Georgi Gunchev out there as well, and of course the view from London on HSBC. And what I find interesting is it's no different than American banking. It's the search for revenue. When you cut costs, isn't there a huge risk to revenue stability or the assumption of revenue growth?
There is, and that is the key question. And as you point out, I don't cover HSBC specifically, but I would say broadly across the banking sector, what we've seen is, as the revenue pressure worsens, banks need to cut costs. I guess that's the broad takeaway. But more specifically, banks focusing on where they're the most profitable. I think, we had, in a good environment, sometimes you have banks sort of ever expanding, and when things get tougher, sort of a retrenchment. We view this, especially some of the cutbacks in some of the investment banking businesses where they're less of a strong player, as positive for the remaining players, because when you have people that aren't making as much money pull out, it tends to make the business more profitable for those that stay.
Alison, I've lost count of the amount of banks in Europe that have tried to cut their way to growth and totally failed. Is this another one?
And I think, I guess that is the point. We have banks cutting their way to growth, but where the U.S. banks have actually succeeded is spending, right? So they've spent on technology, then they get the cost cuts from that technology, but they also get a competitive advantage, and that's actually been the help. So I think the U.S. banks have been helped by sort of a virtuous cycle of a healthier economy. We obviously had the tax cuts, which was a big boon to the banks. But really spending is how they've gotten there.
Is there any extrapolation we can make about the fate of the global bank, given the fact that a lot of banks are deciding to focus on what they're good at and get out of the places that they're not profitable?
I think, there's only one or two banks that make it successful in terms of the global retail banking franchise. That has been HSBC and Citi over time. And then in terms of the global investment banking business, I think which is a business where a lot of the cuts have been coming, there have been some secular pressures, one of which is sort of the technology push that I talked about. The other interesting, pressure has been the cash equity business related to MiFID, and cash equities has only gotten tougher this year for the banks. We have seen those who are the leaders gain share, and that has sort of just led to even more of a retrenchment. We saw a big retrenchment, obviously, from Deutsche Bank this year. HSBC also talking about pulling back in the cash equities business.
Alison, I'd love a word on leadership as well. Jess Staley over at Barclays under pressure. Tidjane Thiam leaving Credit Suisse. Sergio Ermotti now looking for a successor over at UBS. And at HSBC, we have a chairman that's looking to get an overhaul, a strategy reboot, and doing it with an interim CEO. Just how unique is that, Alison?
Yeah, I think that is difficult. I think it also, stresses the challenge of, leaders coming in and taking this business. It raises the question of, are there deeper issues in that? Does that make it tougher to get an external CEO? That was sort of one of the signs that we got from Deutsche Bank when they were undergoing their search. Came in with the CEO that was initially interim and sort of took over. But are the problems, too deep for someone to come in that thinks they're too challenging?
I mean, also we had that headline out of HSBC France. They may get zero for the exit from France. Help us with America and the idea of the slowdown that we've seen in the economies in banking and technology. Is there room for a number 3 or number 4 or number 5 player anymore? I don't see it.
I think that the number 3, 4, or 5 player will always evolve. And so while we're seeing changes at this point in the cycle, on the client side of things, they will always want to deal with a certain amount of players en masse. And so, competition dictates that, we're never going to have just 2 banks, right? And so we have seen, if we look away from some of the big global banks, we see someone like Jefferies that's continuing to gain share in multiple markets.
Alison, we've got to leave it there. Alison Williams there, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Analyst. The stock in London down by a little more than 6%. And for our listeners who might be in the UK or exposed to the FTSE 100, HSBC making up 6% of the FTSE 100. It's the biggest weighting.
I had no
HSBC
idea.
is the biggest weighting on the FTSE.
And frankly,
every time John says something, I learn something.
Wow.
The TOTS won.
Which explains the underperformance this morning on the FTSE 100. It's got that China story in there, and it's got that HSBC weight to it too, so it's down 0.8%.
If you extrapolate out, it explains some of the underperformance more broadly of European stocks, given the fact that financials account for a much bigger proportion overall, and they don't have that tech component.
Financials, healthcare, big component of these stock 600 big weightings.
And there's a question, that virtuous cycle that Alison was talking about is really important. I mean, what are they going to spend on investing in technology at this point? They've got to spend more than $6 billion for severance and making sure that they get all these people off in an okay fashion. I mean, it just is an interesting time for a place where they've been messy for a long time and they're facing some leadership questions.
So you mentioned the weightings of Europe, and it's interesting. If our listeners ever hear people talking about the valuation gap between Europe and the United States, you are comparing tech, the biggest weighting here in the United States, to healthcare, the biggest weighting in Europe. Healthcare is 15%.
You're on fire today. It must be because of Valentine's Day and those roses you got.
Is that right? Is that right?
You're on fire.
Are you trying to stir things up here just a little bit? Equity futures are negative. Not too dramatic, down to 0.4%. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is stellar. This day will be a yummy one, 'cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday, the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing. Gotta check me a vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back. While Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, where equity futures are down around about 1/3 of 1%, negative 12 points on the S&P 500. A lot of economic data coming up this week. Let's start right here in New York. Let's cross over to Vinny Dow Judice. Hey, Vinny.
Hello, Jonathan. Hello, gang. First, from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the first regional factory index of the month, February, 12.9, topping forecast more than the prior month. We'll also be hearing in the days ahead from the Philadelphia Fed, Dallas, Richmond, and Kansas City. All pieces of the puzzle. Keep an eye on them. An early look at what's going on in manufacturing, which has been hard-pressed. Also tomorrow, more from the Fed, the FOMC minutes from the prior meeting. Bloomberg Economics saying, you know, it may be a little dated because of the virus outbreak and comments from Fed officials since the virus outbreak. Also this week, housing starts. We could see some cooling after weather-related bounce back. PPI also tomorrow. Again, New York Fed, regional manufacturing index, beating forecast 12.9 in February. I'm Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio. Let's go back to New York.
Vinny, thanks so much. And John, housing this week. We haven't talked much about housing at all, either single-family or multifamily dynamics. And you know, it's in the mix. It's in the mix. Always.
It's resilient. The story last year really as well, helped out by low rates too.
And some supply goofiness.
You know, Lisa's mentioned this a little bit earlier through the program as well. When we start to see cracks around the consumer story, I think that presents a new worry that we're not used to, that we didn't become desensitized to through last year. We haven't seen that just yet, Lisa.
No, although the Walmart earnings raises that question, the fact that they're reducing their forecast for 2021. They missed across the board in the fourth quarter. This follows Target's disappointing report, and it raises a question: how much is this Amazon taking their business, and how much is this a consumer that has less strength?
Well, a student of this is William Lee. He's at the Milken Institute. He's done wonderful work in international economics, and particularly with his focus on Hong Kong. Well, Bill, let's stay on the consumer right now. What is the Milken pulse of the American consumer?
You know, Tom, one of the things I did ages ago when I was chief U.S. economist of Citi was to estimate the marginal propensity to consume out of wealth. Imagine how and then what I found was that a crash in the stock market has almost 2 to 3 times the wealth effect as a rise in the stock market. So it's very asymmetric. So I don't think it's so surprising to find that in this time of booming stock market, this consumer is strong. But right now we're kind of edging toward the end of that cycle, perhaps. And I think the consumers are getting worried. Also, they're getting worried because real wages may not continue to go up because they don't have the productivity. With the 3 quarters of investment recession we've had, it's unlikely we're going to get the kind of productivity growth that we saw in the first couple quarters of last year.
Bill, you say that the consumer is getting worried. We're not seeing this in the consumer confidence reports at all, which have reached new cycle highs. What are you looking at to determine just how confident the consumer is feeling?
One of the things that I put into the consumption function, which is normally not there, is kind of the implied volatility. And one of the things I found was that as even though the volatility of the markets have been at historical lows, the slowdown in the wealth increase is something that I think is getting is feeding through to consumption. Now, people say that, well, only the rich own stocks, but you know the people also own stocks through their 401ks and everything else. So I think the size of the wealth effect is being underestimated, and I think the rise in the stock market is being questioned more and more, and I think that is reducing the ability of consumers to spend.
You know, all I know, Bill Lee, is you come on the show and the euro tanks. It's like 100% correlation. Euro's gone 108.15 to a 108.05. We're going to get a 107 print in a heartbeat here. I mean, euro's just simply fallen out of bed since, I can tell you exactly when, since 6:38 this morning, 2 hours ago as well. What is the significance, Bill Lee, of a weaker euro through 107? Maybe we test that 105, 104 low, but what is the significance to all of a stronger dollar?
You know, I've always been a euro skeptic since my days at the IMF when I was on the German desk. And I think it's sort of almost my saying it's about time that the dollar prominence relative to the euro shows up. And this is a secular phenomenon, I think, because for Europe to have growth beyond a one handle is a major phenomenon. It's considered major rapid growth in Europe. They have so much structural rigidities that I think the economies there are being pushed ahead by liquidity, and that's only showing up in asset prices. And in fact, it's showing up in borrowing. The negative rates there, I think, is just one of the most harmful policies to be put in place because it's destroying their banking system, and the European monetary system and financial system is highly dependent on bank lending, and that is being destroyed by these negative rates.
Euro dollar below 108, 107.
See how Bill Lee does that? See how Bill Lee does that? It's just
unbelievable. The breakdown in the euro, and I guess the expectation that that's all they've got left, Bill. There's nothing else for them to do. We know the ability to do fiscal stimulus is there. There are doubts about the willingness to follow through on it. What is left over in Europe to respond to a bigger slowdown?
Well, you know, this process called deregulation and regulatory reform is something that's talked about since my days at the IMF, and that was back in the 90s. So the Europeans really refuse to change their way of life, and I think that's what's going to hold them back in a world where their industrial strength is being killed by the fact that China has gone into crisis, and China is, quite frankly, taking away a lot of their industrial might. And the one sector they are so dependent on is the car sector, the auto sector, and that's exactly where China's crashing. So the Europeans are getting it from all ends, monetary side, the trade side, as well as the structural side.
Bill, how much is it a euro weakness story, though, and how much is this a dollar strength story, given the fact that the U.S. economy does not seem to be as affected by all of those factors?
Lisa, exactly right. I mean, as everyone says, the exchange rate is a relative price of currencies. And so when you think of it relative to the U.S. dollar, where the economy is still continuing on near trend, near natural rate of growth, whereas the European growth rate is sinking down toward an ever lower natural growth rate, that says a lot about where the direction of the exchange rate is going to go.
So let's skip February and get straight to March, shall we? Federal Reserve decision, March 18th. ECB decision, March 12th. Set the scene for us.
Well, Christine Lagarde has promised a review, and we will sort of hear more about that review. But until that review comes out, which is essentially going to say we need to do something with our inflation target, they're going to be on hold. The Fed is also on hold because, look, until PCE inflation rises anywhere near the 2% target, the Fed is on hold. The only thing that will cause the Fed to do something is a major crash in the global economy of the sort that they were worried about in 2015, 2016, when the China market seemed like it was disrupting things. Right now, we're not at that place yet.
Okay, well, Bill Lee, I take your point. I think it's smart. But to me, it's not some bold moment for the Fed. It's always their OBE, overcome by events. Now, I don't know if it's a 197 30-year or a 106 euro. Tell me where your limits are, just as one litmus paper, on euro with a 107.97 now. Is it a 105?
I think you're going to see the litmus test come into bank earnings. If J.P. Morgan, Citi, and a lot of the domestic banks start to lose money like crazy, they will step in. But until we start to see that, or until we see stress tests being failed by these U.S. banks, the Fed is going to stand put because their liquidity is really ample right now. They know they screwed up the operating system with the deregulation, the Volcker rule, and then all the Dodd-Frank stuff that's gone in, and they're trying to patch it now by doing their repo operations. But until we sort of straighten out their financial, regulatory, and macroprudential policies, the Fed is going to have to stay on hold.
Bill, there is a question, though, especially given Apple's warning this morning, how much we are not seeing weakness that will play out in U.S. earnings due to the coronavirus, and how much we're underestimating this, as well as how much companies are going to be using this as an excuse, as a foil to hide otherwise what is emerging weakness. And I go back to Walmart's earnings simply because this is before accounting for any potential impact from the coronavirus. Are there signs that the Fed should be responding to that are not just OBEs? Was it OBEs? Is that it, Tom?
Overcome by events.
Yeah, overcome by events types of moments.
They will be overwhelmed by China if they act using monetary policy, because this is not the kind of supply shock that monetary policy can cure. What has to be done is confidence has to be restored in the Chinese worker to be able to go out into the streets and start to consume and go back to work. Until we see that, whatever you do on the monetary and fiscal policy side is going to be useless, because the bottleneck is on the supply side, and that's not going to happen until the authorities in China gain some credibility about how they're projecting the course of the virus. Because right now the numbers they're putting out just don't make sense when they say that things are improving and that this will be a very short virus phenomenon, and yet their policy internally is to lock everybody down and to prevent any kind of further spread. That belies the kind of projections, optimistic projections, that our analysts and the Chinese authorities are using.
Bill, got to fit this in. That dollar move came off the back of the New York Fed Empire Index. Typically, I wouldn't associate a move in the market with the New York Fed Empire Index. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No, I haven't. I would have thought that the Empire Index sort of improving better than expected should have been obvious when you looked at the IP numbers, because the thing that dragged IP numbers down was the utilities component because of the good weather. The regular, the manufacturing component of IP, that was kind of holding steady. So what's the big surprise here?
Billy, thank you so much. We're the Milken Institute. Greatly appreciate that conversation. Now with the news in New York, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. The death toll from the coronavirus has reached 1,873, as almost half of China's 1.3 billion population remains subject to varying forms of travel restrictions and other quarantine measures. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, says there are two things that will play big factors in containing this outbreak.
The fate of all of this is going to be determined by two things: how well China contains their outbreak, and hopefully they'll be able to get their arms around that better over the next coming weeks. But also the other countries that get travel-related cases, will they be able to prevent it from sustained transmission?
Today, the director of the Wuchang Hospital in Wuhan, the city at the center of the outbreak, himself died of the virus. Michael Bloomberg has qualified to join other Democratic presidential candidates on the debate stage for the first time tomorrow night. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, he reached 19% support in the national survey released today, his fourth with more than 10% support, meeting the DNC's debate threshold. Bernie Sanders is first with 31%. Michael Bloomberg is second. Joe Biden is third with 15%. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Senator Elizabeth Warren finished fourth in the poll with 12%. Warren spoke in Nevada ahead of Saturday's caucuses in the state.
I want to be a president who not only goes in with good ideas, I want to be a president who is held accountable for results.
The Boy Scouts of America has filed for bankruptcy protection as it faces a barrage of new sex abuse lawsuits. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. The factory index here in New York, the highest since May. We'll get some more regional Fed reads on manufacturing in the coming weeks, but quite clearly there's a read across here that U.S. manufacturing is doing okay in the face of what is happening in China, ahead of some Eurozone PMIs coming out a little bit later this week.
That does seem to be the story here. U.S. resilience.
We got more data coming in. I mean, is the data that we're seeing now on the China virus? I'm not so sure. A lot of it, I don't think.
Still early days.
Yeah, early
PMIs
days.
out of Europe and the United States coming up this Friday. Look out for that. Ahead of all of this, equity futures are down by 0.4% on the S&P 500, a mild move lower. For Apple, well off session lows, despite the fact they have issued a warning over revenue for the current quarter. The stock is negative, down 1.92%. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Guess what? The California housing market is picking up again, according to one home builder.
Both in the Bay as well as Southern Cal, we've really seen some consistency back in the business. So I think that's exciting because, I think a year ago the sky was falling.
And we asked Cheryl Palmer, she's CEO at Taylor Morrison, about some other metros she has her eye on as well.
It's Phoenix. It just continues and has for quite some time. And then really through Texas. Austin is just powerful. Houston's been very consistent. And Dallas, very similar to what I'd say about California. It had seen a pretty tremendous pace of both price and volume movement. And so it took a little breather, but it's feeling in most submarkets, feeling once again very consistent.
And Palmer says that strength and solid demand that Taylor Morrison saw last year is continuing into January. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000. Are you sitting comfortably? Is your roof cascading light in the space around you? Loving that feeling as you glide over a bumpy road? If you are, you're most certainly experiencing the advanced comfort of a Citroën SUV. If you're not, take one for a comfort drive. A test drive, but way more comfortable. Citroën C3 Aircross and C5 Aircross SUV range. Now with £500 off list price and 3 year 0% APR finance. Ooh la la! Citroën. Citroën UK Limited, acting as a credit broker, not a lender. Conditional sale. Terms, eligibility criteria and conditions apply. Guarantee may be required. PSA Finance UK Limited, participating dealer stock vehicles ordered between the 3rd and the 29th of February and registered by 31st of March.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all.
Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Watching this headline, crossing the Bloomberg, PG&E reporting a $5 billion pre-tax charge related to the California wildfires. Again, that just crossing the Bloomberg as it reports earnings this morning. Its fourth quarter operating profit beating analysts' estimates. And U.S. stock index futures are falling along with European shares after Apple said quarterly sales would miss forecasts, spooking investors who had hoped for limited economic impact from the deadly coronavirus. Right now, S&P futures are down about 13 points. Dow futures down 149. NASDAQ futures down 49. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. 10-year Treasury up 11.30 seconds, yield 1.54%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.39%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.1% on $1.07 at $50.98 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.5% or $8 at $15.94.40 an ounce. The euro 1.0801 against the dollar. British pound 1.3023, and the yen is at 109.78. And we are watching shares of Apple. They're down about 2% in early trading. Walmart delivering a double whammy to investors as holiday sales missed expectations. Its outlook for the current year failed to impress investors as well. But actually, that has changed around. Sentiment has turned. Walmart shares are now higher in early trading. They're up about 0.9%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Thanks so much, Karen. Greatly appreciate it this morning. This is an important interview because it comes on an important day where we see Franklin Templeton taking out Legg Mason, where active management looks to scale. I don't have the chart in front of me. Matt Winkler would chastise me for not having the chart in front of me. But basically, Franklin Templeton, and there was some Argentinian noise in there as well, like all in active management, is really struggled. I mean, the industry, Matt, as a whole, is still finding search for better track record, isn't it?
Absolutely. You can't miss the obituaries that active management is a dead business going back, at least a decade. So when what seems to be self-evident is turned on its head, it's a big story.
And yet you actually identified one active manager in particular who has managed to beat them all, Cathie Wood, and you really narrow in on Tesla shares and her bet on Tesla. And I think that that's important on a morning when Tesla shares are up 5% ahead of the market open. Everything can be down, but Tesla is up. And why did you feel it was important to write this?
Because actually, even though Tesla is her largest holding at 10% of her ETF, exchange-traded fund, she's got 40 companies. And the real story actually about Cathie Wood is that she has outperformed everyone over 3 years, over 5 years, over any period, really, in the past 5 years since she launched this fund. And it's not just about one company, it's about a lot of companies. It's really about what she says is finding the next big thing. That's what she's all about. And she would also say that it's not about hewing to the benchmarks, which is looking backwards. It's about finding out what's going to work. So if your performance is measured on a benchmark, which is what passive investing is all about, she would say, and she's proven it over 5 years, that's not the winning strategy.
It's interesting, and Tom, this goes to your point about the consolidation between active managers and passive managers. Can you do that, or is it just luck, right? I mean, can you really identify a winning strategy, or is it shown time and time again that essentially you can make a couple of lucky calls, but ultimately it's all going to revert back to the index, right? I mean, how do you sort of delineate that?
So among her winners are Juno Therapeutics, Invitae, one's a Seattle-based company, one's in San Francisco, Mercado Libre, which is in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and of course Tesla. So that's 4 companies. Tesla is one among 4. All of those companies share something in common, which is they're very disruptive, to say the least, and they are doing things that hadn't been done before. That's not luck. That's actually research, and she's done a lot of research and arguably has the best research on Tesla anywhere.
Her R squared is 0.78. Let me translate that, folks. That means she's not the Capital Group where she used to work as chief economist. I mean, she's not trying to beat the index. Obviously, this is not the proverbial core holding in a retirement portfolio. But it's almost, Matt, a bolt-on. It's a place for somebody to get oomph who's got a very bland, boring portfolio. It's a place where you go in with X percent of your money looking for just what you say, an innovation pop.
So she would say, and has said, if you give us 5 years, we will show you, great performance. We'll get you there.
Well, she's only done double SPX in 5 years. She's up 24 Winkler would say I have to go to 2 decimal points, 24.00% versus 12.27. She's outperformed over 5 years by 1,200 basis points.
Okay, that's really great, but I think the much more impressive accomplishment is that the parade of analysts over the past 5 years has been consistently overwhelmingly bearish on a company called Tesla. And when they were getting the visibility, the quotes everywhere, appearing on shows like this, she was doing the opposite of what they were recommending, which shows you actually her belief system and also her integrity. And she's absolutely walloped them. And so my point, coming back to your question, why do this column? It's, first of all, in a crowd of he's, the she did it much better. And the she is disruptive, and the she has thinking that they don't have.
All right, let's focus in on Tesla, because Tesla is continuing its ascent this morning. It's up now 5.2% ahead of the U.S. Open, and I thought it was really interesting. The Financial Times showed that Renaissance Technologies actually built their Tesla stake of more than 2% ahead of the rally that we've seen this year. What is the bet for Tesla? Because increasingly, it's not becoming as much of a car bet as it is a battery bet. And that seems to be what's driving the shares.
Actually, it's both. The car bet is the cars become increasingly profitable. The cars become increasingly profitable, and our market share, by the way, went up when the Tesla killers entered the market. And there are a lot of them, from China to Germany to the U.S. So the cars are becoming more profitable, and they're outselling their competitors. The batteries, of course, are, as you just said, probably years ahead. The problem for the legacy automakers who are stuck with a 19th century fossil fuel machine is that every time they try to sell an EV, they become less profitable or unprofitable. So there's a built-in incentive with the legacy automakers to actually beat Tesla, because it's going to be very painful going forward, whereas Tesla is going to be more profitable.
Matt, thank you so much. Matthew Winkler, our editor-in-chief emeritus, with just a terrific essay on someone looking at innovation. Kathy Wood of ARK Investments. Look for that at Bloomberg Opinion. Futures at -14. What are we watching more than anything? Euro with a 107 handle breaks down. Right now, 1.0803 on Euro. Decidedly weaker Euro. Some stability in the last 10 minutes, but it has been a challenging day. For Europe, to say the least.
Yeah, although I will say it's interesting to me, the story today is one of resilience in U.S. equities, resilience in Apple. People don't care about the potential impact. Interesting to see. Right now, futures a little lower, but resilient. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only £19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms. Are you sitting comfortably? Is your roof cascading light in the space around you? Loving that feeling as you glide over a bumpy road? If you are, you're almost certainly experiencing the advanced comfort of a Citroën SUV. If you're not, take one for a comfort drive. A test drive, but way more comfortable. Citroën C3 Aircross and C5 Aircross SUV range. Now with £500 off list price and 3 year 0% APR finance. Ooh la la! Citroën. Citroën UK Limited, acting as a credit broker, not a lender. Conditional sale. Terms, eligibility criteria and conditions apply. Guarantee may be required. PSA Finance UK Limited, participating dealer stock vehicles ordered between the 3rd and the 29th of February and registered by 31st of March.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
To get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. 4-day work week, Tuesday it is. Here at Bloomberg Surveillance, we welcome all of you. Good morning, Boston, 106.1 FM, 99.1 FM in Washington, Bloomberg 1130 in New York, and out in San Francisco, the very early morning, 960 the Bay Area, and coast to coast and worldwide, Sirius XM Channel 119 and our digital products as well. Paul, there's a few corporate stories today.
There are.
Just a few.
Some big names as well. I mean, Apple, calling into question that once again China as it relates to their sales. So sales are going to come in lower than expected. And obviously they have a huge exposure. They had HSBC. Wow. I mean, just the 15% of the workforce and it really focusing back on their core Asia market. So we're seeing, another international bank pull back from some of its non-core markets. We've seen that with some of the European banks, Tom, as we well know, with most notably Deutsche Bank.
Lots to talk about in this hour. I'm thrilled that you're with us worldwide. There's so much to talk about on companies that we got to get right to David Wilson. I'm going to let him run here as long as he wants to go, because I'll bet you David's got some long list of things. You start with Cupertino.
Oh, you have to. I mean, Apple shares down 2% in early trading. It's all about the effects of coronavirus on this quarter's revenue. The company's had to close most of its China stores. Production of smartphones and other electronics has been limited. So, put it all together. I mean, Apple's taking a hit here because of the coronavirus. And it isn't just Apple. It's their chip suppliers, too. You've got Qualcomm down 1.5% in early trading, Qorvo down 2%, Skyworks Solutions down 2.5%. And then you move to chip equipment makers. They're lower because it's possible that the U.S. may restrict the company's sales to China. This is a Dow Jones report that said the limits may be among new trade restrictions. Applied Materials, KLA, Lam Research, all down 4.5% in early trading. And General Electric may also be in the Trump administration's crosshairs. That stock down 2%. The White House considering blocking a GE joint venture from selling engines for a new Chinese airliner. Also, according to Dow Jones, citing unnamed people familiar with the matter, they said the proposal will be considered at a meeting today. Now we can start to look at some gains. Tesla's up 5%. Morgan Stanley said the electric car maker may be worth as much as $1,200 a share, about 50% more than Friday's close. To be sure, the firm reiterated the equivalent of a sell rating on Tesla. Its base case is for a price target of $500.
No, I'm confused. Do that again.
In other words, Morgan Stanley has a bull, base, and bear case on Tesla. That's Adam Jonas, who's the analyst over there. And the bull case is for $1,200. It's all off the battery supplies. There are potential in that business. But as far as their main argument, stock's going down, at least in their view.
I've never heard of that. Paul, you're the pro.
I've not heard of that either. I mean, I guess the bottom line is what's your call here? And I think this analyst has been pretty bearish here, but I guess he's trying to cover his tracks a little bit, laying out some scenario analysis, Tom. Scenario analysis.
Exactly, and it's being interpreted positively.
Scenarios, small detail. Continue,
but you
David.
can spell Buffett, I bet, with two T's.
Yeah, buffet.
Right?
Yeah,
right. Kroger's up 5.5%. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway disclosed late Friday that it added a stake in the supermarket chain. Berkshire also disclosed an initial investment in the drug maker Biogen, and those shares are up 2.5%. Then we have the deal of the day in the money management business. Legg Mason up 23.5%. The firm accepted a takeover offer from Franklin Resources. That's the Franklin Templeton Mutual Funds.
That's valued. Been around forever.
True enough.
Yep.
Deal valued at $4.3 billion. It's all cash, and it's backed by billionaire investor Nelson Peltz, whose Trian Fund Management is Legg Mason's fourth largest shareholder. By the way, Franklin up 13% in early trading. So it's being seen as a win-win so far. On the earnings front, you've got Walmart up 1%. The retailer has come back from early losses tied to disappointing results. Fiscal fourth quarter earnings and sales missed analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. Advanced Auto Parts, that's the auto parts retailer, up 7%. On the other hand, the medical device maker Medtronic down 3%. The food maker Conagra Brands down 6.5%. The chemical company Westlake Chemical down 5.5%. And then there's PG&E lower by about 1.5%. The California utility took a $5 billion pre-tax charge in the fourth quarter for wildfire claims. PG&E declined to provide earnings and sales projections for this year. They still expect to come out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy by mid-year, though.
David, thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, he's got plenty of deals, plenty of big company news to keep him going. Hey, Tom, our good friend Sarah Hansard, she's Bloomberg Law healthcare reporter. She's out with an interesting note a couple of days ago. Look, this one jumped out at me. Total healthcare spending by employers, and about 40 million of their employees and family members grew another 4.4% in 2018 to an all-time high of $5,892
and that's just
per person.
The braces.
That's exactly right. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us. So as we think of this, is as Tom likes to frame this is a conversation that every family has at every dinner when they sit down, the rising cost of healthcare. Help us frame kind of where we are in 2018, 2019, going into 2020.
Okay. In 2018, the spending, as you already noted, it's an all-time high. Now, that at least it's a little lower than the gross domestic product for 2018, but it's still far higher than the consumer price index, and people are paying ever more for out-of-pocket costs. That rose to $907 per person. So if you've got a family of 4, multiply that times 4. That wasn't the biggest cause of the spending growth, but it's still a lot for people, who have to pay that money out of pocket.
So it's interesting. So, what we hear from corporate America as we go through earnings cycle is the cost of health care for employers. What are they trying to do to offset that?
Oh, they've tried sort of everything under the sun, and they're not having a whole lot of success, but they're still continuing to try. They're doing things like General Motors has done direct contracting with the Henry Ford Center in Detroit, and some smaller companies also are doing direct contracting with hospitals. A big thing I think that you're going to see in this coming years, I think you're going to see more companies negotiate with their health insurers and tell their health insurers that you can't hide prices from us anymore. You can't sign anti-competitive contracts with hospital systems. I think you're going to see more things like that, in an attempt to get these prices in line.
All of our listeners, and you get, Sarah, when you're on, we get a huge response. All of our listeners, whatever their politics, are going to say, none of this is going to get fixed in Washington because the lobbyists, all the money that's being tossed around to keep it going. What I see at any given dining room table at any moment is a screaming cry over deductibles.
Oh, yeah.
Are high and higher deductibles working? Are they creating the right incentives? I don't see it in your essay.
Yeah. For the last year or two, employers have said, look, we realize now that we can't just keep raising out-of-pocket costs for people that's not doing the job. They are now turning to doing other things. But in the meantime, you still have a big increase in the number of health savings accounts. They've gone way up over the last 5 years, and they're now like over 33% of people have those types of accounts. So the employers are starting to turn to doing other things, but out-of-pocket costs are still a big factor for people.
So, Sarah, prescription drug prices, that's the part of the food chain that I could never just get my head around. I don't know where the prices come from. I don't know who sets them and, how the inflation works there. Is there any move to try to get a handle on that part of the equation?
Well, you've got rebates going on, but this survey can't really measure those rebates very well. About the only rebates they could measure were in Massachusetts, and it's highly unlikely that Massachusetts is necessarily representative of the country as a whole. The pharmacy claims, the amount spent by employers on pharmacy claims went up like more than nearly 21% over the 5-year period. So you're hearing more and more from employers. Right. What they're worried about is the specialty drugs, like the atrophy drug for babies that costs the list price is more than $2 million. That could bankrupt a small company if they have to pay for something like that.
Give the state of play 1 year from now for our listeners. I mean, we go back and forth, and how much are we spending per family per year? I mean, we're up to what, 6%? I mean, 16% of GDP on medical. Is that right?
I believe that's about right. And then they're expecting it to go up more to 18% or 20%. I don't see things turning around a whole lot. Surely it looks like Congress is serious about trying to at least do something about surprise bills. But there you've got this debate going on between the doctors on the one hand and the insurers and the employers on the other. They don't want the doctors to be able to game the arbitration system, because it looks like in states where you have big arbitration systems, the costs have gone up. I think at the moment it looks like they will be able to do something on surprise bills, but the doctors are coming back with a really big push. The hospital groups are coming back with a really big push to try to get more on arbitration there.
Sarah Hansard, writing for Bloomberg Law, definitive, detailed work on our medical system. Paul, it has so changed from when you and I were looking at 4 big big drug companies and all that. Right now with the news. In New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. President Donald Trump is threatening to sue everyone related to former special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. It comes as his friend and one-time advisor Roger Stone will be sentenced this week. In a series of tweets this morning, the president called the Mueller probe a scam. It comes as more than 2,000 former Justice Department officials are calling on Attorney General William Barr to resign. Democratic Senator Ben Cardin says he agrees with those calls.
Attorney General Barr has been the personal attorney for the president rather than America's attorney general. This has been over and over again. We've seen him act and do the personal bidding of the president rather than the independent Department of Justice that has a great reputation as being an independent agency.
The Federal Judges Association is calling an emergency meeting to address Barr's intervention in the Roger Stone case. Democratic presidential candidates are campaigning ahead of Nevada's caucuses on Saturday. Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez says his party is working hard to avoid a repeat of the technical issues that plagued the Iowa caucuses.
There's no app being used to tabulate. That was a problem in Iowa. And again, I think one of the lessons I learned from Iowa is we're redoubling our efforts to make sure that people are ready for Saturday.
And Denny Hamlin won the Daytona 500. Meanwhile, Ryan Newman is in serious condition after a horrific crash at the finish. His injuries are considered to be not life-threatening. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Paul, Tom?
Michael Barr, thank you so much. We have some red on the screen, a little bit of a risk-off here trade today. We've got some news out of Apple, some news out of Walmart, just causing a little bit of a pause in the market. S&P down 11, Dow down 140, Tom.
New weakness in Euro, 107.92. Euro gives way again. It's just an ugly chart since early this morning.
Yeah, exactly. Also looking at crude oil down about 1.9% on WTI, $51.04 a barrel. We always like to look at crude. It gives you a good sense of kind of what the global expectations for global GDP demand is. A little bit of weakness in crude right now. This is Bloomberg.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Influence.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
What have you done with my OCT eye scanner? I'm supposed to be doing an eye scan with Mrs. Green.
We launched it, like you said.
Well, I meant launch it to the public, not on a rocket.
Oh.
Tell them how it takes a hospital-grade 3D image that could help detect eye conditions up to 4 years earlier.
Oh, sugar.
And that it's available at Specsavers.
Oh, and now also in
outer space. Introducing our most advanced eye exam with OCT scans. Search Specsavers OCT to find out more. Charge applies. OCT available at selected stores.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are falling this morning along with European shares after Apple said quarterly sales would miss forecasts, spooking investors who had hoped for a limited economic impact from the deadly coronavirus. The euro is falling below $1.08 for the first time since April 2017 after a better than expected reading on a New York factory gauge. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are down 12 points. Dow futures down 143. NASDAQ futures down 46. The DAX in Germany's down 0.6%. 10-year Treasury up 8/32, yield 1.55%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2% on $1.03 to $51.02 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.6% or $9.50 at $15.95.90 an ounce. The euro at 1.0787 against the dollar. British pound 1.3017 and the yen at 109.84. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Thank you so much, Karen. Greatly appreciate that. I'm going to let Paul Sweeney slide into our esteemed guest. Michael Holland has been so entrenched in our equity cadence, our equity discourse for decades that we forget his accomplishments, not only with Oppenheimer Company years ago in a small shop called Blackstone, but his work for his Harvard College and also the Winston Churchill Foundation of the United States.
This is not Michael Holland's first rodeo, is it, Tom?
No, it's not his first great bull market either.
Michael Holland, chairman of Holland and Company. Thanks so much for joining us, Michael. So, as we step back here and look at the market, the performance we had in 2019, the, pretty solid start here to 2020. To the extent that there are some concerns out there, one of them is the concentration of their performance in, roughly a handful of names, some tech names that we all know, the Amazons or the Microsofts or the Apples of the world. How concerned are you about that aspect of the market's overall performance?
Well, concern, Paul, is a word. I would just move back from that and say mindful that when these things get crazed, and I was born into the business, Tom knows, in something called the Nifty 50, where a handful of stocks back in the 70s was doing what we're seeing today. But it's different in that the valuations of the big names, the Microsofts and the Apples, the valuations are not as egregious as they were back then. Some friends have recently asked me, as they want to do, when would you sell all of your stocks, which is a variation on some of the things Tom Keene has asked me over the years. And I would sell all my stocks if they became egregiously priced, as I observed painfully in the 1970s when I broke into the business, because the crash of those Nifty 50 stocks was breathtaking in how much capital was destroyed. And so I think at this point it's something to be mindful of. I would actually say you've actually asked a great question, because the coronavirus may actually it has the possibility of causing something like that to happen again if the world liquidity spigots go wide open sometime in the next 6 to 12 months.
But what's so interesting, Michael, is the backdrop are stunningly negative real yields, and in some places in the world, true nominal yields negative. The 30-year bond with a 198 handle 3 cups of coffee ago is almost a negative yield that we saw in 08-09. What does that signal to you to see bond prices bid up and yields ever lower?
It's something that we've never seen in our lifetimes in the business. It makes all the economics minds go crazy when they talk about how do you get real pricing in all of the world's markets when you have negative yields. There's just an inherent contradiction in all of this, so that risk-free rates of return no longer have any meaning. So, Tom, it's actually interesting because you and I hope, are not talking about this a year from now, but it's possible that because of what you just described, as well as the possibility that we have a spigot opening in terms of even further liquidity around the world, that we could get to crazy valuations once again, which causes, then we know what the other side of that is. But in the meantime, so the risk is in both directions, I think, always. But I think now we have a little more risk in the other direction, which would be upward rather than downward. It's not a good sign.
Euro breaking down 107.90 now with DXY stronger, DXY out to new highs, dollar strength.
Yeah, Michael, it's interesting. We were just following up on Tom's, question about, the bond market. Just looking at our commodity screen here on the Bloomberg terminal, you look at the energy down double digit, metals down mid-single digits, ags down, red on the screen. So the commodity market is clearly saying, hey, maybe there's some slowing global growth. Maybe the coronavirus here is a big issue for global growth. The equity markets, not so much. And again, does that just kind of go back to that argument of the Fed and central banks around the world keeping liquidity in the marketplace?
Yes, and Paul, to your point, the inflation has been a word that has been around Bloomberg a lot recently in the different formats and media. But and the inflation today is what Tom just talked about with the bond markets. The prices there are stratospheric. So nosebleed time in terms of prices and as he says, negative yield. So those financial assets, and then you have the stock market, you have the Facebooks and the Teslas and so on. So you have all of these things going on simultaneously with the commodities market saying there's no inflation of that kind of thing to be worried about with gold, etc. On the other hand, you have inflation in the asset prices of financial assets. So, and right now, I don't think it's as worrisome as your original question posited, but on the one hand, on the other hand, that's what I'm watching right now.
Yeah, we run out of time. Michael Holland, thank you so much. I got about 10 more questions, and we'll continue with him another time. Mr. Holland with Holland and Company this morning. What I wanted to ask Paul, and you and I have confronted this before. You have you own some stocks, and you got like 7 or 12 or 15 or 18. There's always 2 or 3 that are going nowhere, and the patience to hold them. By definition, if you have an adult portfolio of stocks, there's always ones that aren't moving.
That's right.
Or even going southish.
And the question is, are they not moving because the reason you bought them, the catalyst that you bought them in anticipation of those catalysts moving the stock forward, is that catalyst now off the table? If it is, then you need to rethink your investment outlook, as Barry Ritholtz would suggest. But if the investment thesis is still there, that suggests patience,
It's fascinating right now. And, of course, the buffeting all this is, we've mentioned, is central bank action and what we see in the bond market. Let me run through the bonds right now. We'll do bonds first in our data check today. 2-year yield, 1.41%. We had a 139, even 38 earlier. It's really reversed to a higher yield, still in by 2 basis points, lower yield by 0.02%. That's move the decimal over. That's 2 basis points. But nevertheless, a more constructive tone in the 2-year over the last hour, maybe 2 hours. 10-year yield 1.56%. Had a 198 in the 30-year bond. We go right out to 201 right now. So there's a moderation in the tension out there. Futures at negative 12. Dow futures at negative 139. And the VIX 14.98. This is Bloomberg.
Life in the fast lane surely makes you lose your mind. Life in the fast lane.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black, fit it with privacy glass, a full leather ebony interior, then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar R Dynamic Black, understated, has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar, Land Rover, above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130.